agree to? Those of that opinion say aye. Against? I believe the ayes have it. I call the clerk.
A bill for an act to amend the Criminal Code Act 1995 and for related purposes.
Minister.
I move that this bill be now read a second time, and I seek leave to have the second reading speech incorporated in Hansard.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted, Minister. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And I rise to speak on the Criminal Code Amendment Hate Crimes Bill 2024. And in commencing my comments to the chamber, can I just say that the Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton, has once again led the way on a crucial issue of national security and social cohesion. Last night, in the Federation Chamber, the Albanese Labor government caved in to Mr Dutton's demands for strong mandatory penalties and new offences for anti-Semitic attacks. The Albanese Labor government were forced into the position of introducing amendments to their own legislation to follow Mr Dutton's strong lead. They have also supported, I am pleased, coalition amendments to further strengthen their hate crimes bill. Only on the 3rd of February, as recently as that, did we have Minister Murray Watt confirming that federal Labor would not be introducing mandatory minimum sentences for acts of Commonwealth terrorism. And yet here today, we are in the Senate and we will pass the legislation that Peter Dutton had raised with the Australian people. The hate crimes legislation is about ensuring those who advocate force or violence against a group of people are held accountable for their actions. The Parliament needs to make it clear that you cannot call on others to commit violence against a group of people. The overwhelming majority of Australians agree force or violence against anyone and those who incite others to use where the Sydney Opera House, a most famous landmark, was lit up in solidarity with the people of Israel. Instead, it will forever be a day of shame for our nation because a violent mob were able to keep Jewish Australians away from the very landmark that was lit up in solidarity with them. The legislation is an important step in combating the anti-Semitism crisis that we have in Australia today. As I have said, the Coalition has secured some very significant amendments to this legislation, and we are pleased that the government has agreed to them. The final piece of legislation before the Senate today is as a result of the strong leadership of Peter Dutton. Thanks to the work of the Coalition standing up to the anti-Semitic crisis across Australia, the Labor Party have finally agreed to some strong measures to ensure those in our community who are committing terrorism offences are punished appropriately. Peter Dutton has once again led the way on a crucial issue of national security and social cohesion. As I have stated, the Coalition has been calling for strong action in 4 key areas, the first being mandatory minimum sentences for terrorism offences of 6 years jail. I would have thought the Australian people would be surprised to know that there was not a minimum mandatory sentence if you were found guilty of committing an act of terrorism in this country. We also advocated for tougher action on prohibited Nazi and terrorist organisation symbols and related behaviour, increasing the maximum penalty to 5 years with a mandatory minimum jail time of 12 months. We also advocated for a decisive response to attacks on places of worship through new offences for those who advocate or threaten such attacks.
Testing.
And targeted action for religiously motivated property damage that advocates violence against groups with a mandatory minimum sentence of 12 months imprisonment and a maximum of 5 years imprisonment. I am pleased to advise the Senate and the Australian people that all of these outcomes will be achieved through the amended hate crimes legislation.
Thank you.
Since October the 7th, 2023, the anti-Semitic crisis in Australia has reached a point
We've got a lot going
where we
on.
have seen the terrorist firebombing
Peter Dutton's
of a
just about to do a press
and the
conference
shocking
regarding
attempt
this, so I'm going to switch to
carry
that.
out what could have been a potential mass casualty attack. Peter Dutton, every single step of the way, has stood with the Australian people, has stood for national...
All right, I'm switching to Peter Dutton right now.
And best wishes to all of those in North Queensland who are affected by the floods. I was talking to the Premier, or texting with the Premier earlier this morning and speaking with Bob Katter earlier, and it's good that the Prime Minister's up there visiting as well. There are a lot of people who have had devastation as a result of the floods to their properties, and to their businesses and to their families, and obviously the loss of 2 lives. So it's a stark reminder of the reality, particularly living in North Queensland, as Bob reminded me about the weather events that they have up there. And we hope that there is a speedy recovery and that people can listen to the advice of all of the experts, and we really honour the work of the first responders as well. I also wanted to let you know that I've written to the Prime Minister today asking for an independent inquiry in relation to the fact that the Prime Minister of our country wasn't notified for 9 days, 10 days of what was believed to be the biggest planned terrorist attack in our country, in our country's history. And it's inconceivable that the Prime Minister didn't know about it. It's inconceivable, if you think about it, during the conversations that the Prime Minister had with the Premier, who had been briefed on the 20th of January, that neither the Premier nor the Prime Minister raised the issue in the discussions. Wouldn't Chris Minns, when he spoke to the Prime Minister, mention that, what do you think is happening with this matter? Do you know something? Have we had any further information from the authorities about this investigation? Not one word was uttered between the Premier and the Prime Minister for 9 days. It doesn't ring true. And I know the Prime Minister can run around with all sorts of theories about why he can't disclose the date that he was advised by the Australian Federal Police for national security reasons. But again, that's not a credible story either. The Prime Minister keeps chopping and changing his position. That's exactly why there needs to be an independent inquiry in relation to this matter. An eminent Australian from the criminal intelligence and law enforcement intelligence community needs to be appointed to conduct this review, because it can't happen again. And I think that is a very clear message. Also very pleased that the government has seen fit to support our proposal in relation to mandatory sentences for acts of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, as we know, have no place in our community, in our country whatsoever. And the escalation that's taken place since October 7 of 23 has been a national shame and a national disgrace. And entirely predictable, though, of course, because people knew no red lines and people continue to push boundaries. Protests continued, the doxing continued, the graffiti, the hate, the racism, and all of it continued unabated. And unless people know that there is a consequence for their actions, it will continue, and we're not going to allow that. So the Prime Minister's seen fit to support the position that we've advocated, and we're very happy for that. I'll hand over to James, and then I'm happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Peter. Well, the Parliament will act today to send a very strong message that the anti-Semitic domestic terrorism campaign that has unleashed on our country over the last few months is totally and utterly unacceptable. And the Parliament will send a strong message that there are real consequences for this behaviour, that a mandatory minimum sentence will apply for a terrorism offence, that a mandatory minimum sentence will apply for someone who waves the flag of a listed terrorist organisation, that places of worship and other significant religious centres will be protected against the urging and threatening of violence. But the Parliament is not acting today because of the leadership of the Prime Minister. The Parliament is not acting today because of the decisiveness of the Labor Party. The Parliament is acting today because the Prime Minister has been dragged, kicking and screaming, to finally introduce tough legislation that will ensure there are real penalties for this behaviour. It was only last week that the Prime Minister was rubbishing the need for mandatory minimum sentences. It was on Tuesday that Labor senators voted against a motion from the coalition advocating for mandatory minimum sentences. So once again, we have a Prime Minister who doesn't have the strength to make the tough decisions in the national interest, who has to be led to do the right thing by Peter Dutton and the coalition. It's also no thanks to the Green Teals, who voted with their Green allies in the House of Representatives today against these tough laws. I'm particularly astonished that members of Parliament like Zoe Daniel and Monique Ryan, who represent significant Jewish community constituencies in my home state of Victoria, voted against these mandatory minimum sentences. You cannot say that you want tough action on anti-Semitism. You cannot say you stand with the Jewish community if you vote against the real consequences that are necessary to deter this horrific conduct which we've seen in our country over the last 15 months.
Okay, happy to take any questions. Yep.
Just on the inquiry, do you want that to be made public? And with such a matter, doesn't it risk exposing our security agencies depending on, if that is made public and what we find out there?
Well, it should be made public and there should be transparency around it because it's without precedent. There is no way in the world that a Prime Minister would be kept in the dark for 10 days about an alleged terrorist plot that could have killed hundreds of Australians. Why was the Premier of New South Wales notified about it if there was a national security imperative to keep it from political leaders? It just doesn't add up. And if there are elements that need to be redacted, if they need to be kept secret for national security reasons, I'm sure that can be facilitated in the report. But it's the Prime Minister's argument again, and he's had a number of different positions, but this argument that somehow it's a breach of national security if he declares what date he was advised by the police. I mean, that just doesn't wash, and no one should accept that at all. Andrew? Sorry, I'll come back in a second.
Who do you actually feel is responsible for not telling the Prime Minister? Does the buck stop with the Federal Police Commissioner and the ASIO Director General?
I think, to be honest, Andrew, the Prime Minister has the questions to answer here. I don't think there's any breakdown in the process. The New South Wales Police have either made a deliberate decision not to advise the Commonwealth so that the Prime Minister wasn't advised because they were worried he was going to leak the information. Beyond that, there's no other reasonable explanation. Again, I just can't understand how the Premier and the Prime Minister could go to the childcare centre, could go to the joint press conference, could have however many conversations over the course of the next 8-9 days, and the Premier doesn't say in passing, or the Prime Minister doesn't raise it with him. It doesn't pass the pub test. And I just think it's obvious the Prime Minister's not being honest here. He wasn't advised for 9 days. He tried to give Karl Stefanovic some view this morning that you shouldn't assume that he wasn't advised. Well, that's a new line again. And I just think we need somebody with honesty and integrity to have a look at the process. And then we can work out from there what happened. Yeah.
Why are you calling this inquiry before you've requested a briefing from ASIO and the AFP? Don't you think some of these questions could be answered by the authorities?
Well, I don't think it's the place of ASIO or the Australian Federal Police to advise me why the Prime Minister wasn't advised for 9 days. That's not their job. We'll come back. Yep, Mark.
So isn't that, though, what you're doing in essence? You're asking for resources that would otherwise be devoted towards investigating this incident to be diverted for political reasons to answer to an independent inquirer. Isn't that the timing for that is wrong, is it not? Shouldn't we be focused on the investigation itself?
I just don't think, Mark, it distracts from resources at all. I think it's obvious that the Prime Minister wasn't notified, and the question is why. I don't think that distracts hours of human resource away from investigations. I think it's obvious that the Prime Minister was kept in the dark. The question is why. Now, was it a political reason? Did Mark Dreyfus know? Was the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff informed? Did the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor get a briefing? Look, my recollection in government was that the Federal Police would call up and speak to advisors or my Chief of Staff or me as Minister with raw intelligence because they were worried probably about covering their own backsides if an event happened and the Minister hadn't been notified. And how can we conceive of a position where the Prime Minister of our country is not aware of a planned mass terrorist attack that could have resulted in a 40-metre blast zone and hundreds of people losing their lives? I think they're reasonable questions, not politically based. This is a matter of national security and it can't be repeated. And I'm not aware of any precedent for it before. I'll work my way across. Charles?
Mr Dutton, have you been offered a briefing by our intelligence agencies or the government? And if so, have you taken up that offer?
Well, Charles, a couple of points. As I said the other day, I've spoken by text with the Director General of ASIO. I think James has had a briefing in relation to the matter. I've had a number of briefings from the AFP Commissioner and from the Director General of ASIO in relation to the anti-Semitic activity, and obviously there's information that's publicly available, which is sort of the extent of what you get in some of these briefings anyway. So I haven't had a briefing in relation to to this event. I will do in course when there's further information available, but I've worked in this space very closely for a long period of time. I understand the processes that are in place, which is what amazes me about the lack of engagement from the Prime Minister. When we had the attempt to bring down that A380, we were constantly engaged with the agencies about what was happening during the course of that operation, during the course of the covert elements of that operation, and it's inconceivable in this circumstance, unless they were worried that the Prime Minister or his office were going to leak the information which would have compromised the covert nature of it or the covert element of it. It's inconceivable as to why else the Prime Minister wouldn't have been briefed. He doesn't seem to be concerned by that. So we'll come across.
Has anyone actually, do you have actually any evidence that the agencies were worried about leaks, or is that just something that you're suggesting?
I'm not going to comment on discussions I've had with individuals out of agencies, and people can draw their own conclusions based on their own experiences. But there's nothing else that adds up as to why the Prime Minister would be kept in the dark for 9 days when the authorities saw fit to brief the Premier, and he was open and honest about the fact that he had been briefed on the 20th of January.
Those conversations you'd have with the Director General, did you explicitly ask him whether he had told?
I'm not going into conversations.
Mr. Dutton,
Patricia? Yeah.
Thank you. It's my turn. Mr. Dutton, just on that, obviously you have many sources in all of these.
The hell's
agencies
Patricia
having been
Carvelis
with
doing
this
there?
minister. Are you saying people have been talking to you and suggesting that there's a fear that the Prime Minister or his office leaks information?
Patricia, I'm saying that there should be an independent inquiry because...
Is it sourced? Because you know, obviously, some of the most important people in these agencies. Is it sourced or is it a hunch?
We'll try and give everyone a question. So I've answered the question. I think we should have an independent inquiry, and I think there should be transparency about why the Prime Minister was willingly or not kept in the dark for 9 days. David.
Mr. Dutton, I want to go back to Andrew Tilloch's question about whether there are questions for the AFP or ASIO in their decisions about who they brief. Because when you answered his question, you said you didn't think there was any breakdown in the process. But how can you know that? Because you're calling for an inquiry. If you don't think there was a breakdown in the process, why call for the inquiry? Surely in this whole question, there are some questions to be answered by the AFP about their decisions on who they briefed and when.
Well, we'll ask questions at Senate estimates and go through that process. And obviously, somebody having a look at the whole situation will look at the roles of everyone. My job is... Well, if there is an independent investigation, the process of the Prime Minister being briefed by the agency, whether it's Australian Federal Police, ACIC or ASIO or ASD or whoever it might be, then you would expect for questions to be asked about, was the Prime Minister briefed, why not, what was the logic to it, and maybe there are discussions with the PMO, as I say, in terms of brief the advisor, but the PM doesn't need to know. Maybe there's a perfectly legitimate reason that so far has escaped all of us collectively as to why the Prime Minister was in the dark for 9 days. And so I think they're reasonable questions that the Prime Minister can answer, and really only the Prime Minister. But the first step is for an inquiry to start, and that's what I would encourage.
You suggest that there's been, are you suggesting that there has been any ill outcome or unintended consequence or dereliction of duty if it is indeed the case that the Prime Minister did not know over 10 days? Would anything have been different, in your view, if it were established?
Well, it's a hard question. It's a hard question to answer in the sense that you're not there receiving the information and understanding the dynamics of the operation. But as I said before, when I was Home Affairs Minister, and I'm sure it's the case for Tony Burke now, I mean, we carried secure communications with us 24/7, wherever we were in the world. And the idea of that was that you were able to be contacted for an NSC meeting to be convened immediately if there was a terrorist attack or whatever incident may have occurred. There are countless reasons why the Prime Minister should be involved in a discussion. The deployment of assets from the Commonwealth, the involvement of specialist services and other aspects of the Commonwealth's assets that they could bring to bear in an investigation. It just again, it doesn't pass the pub test that the Premier of New South Wales knew about it on the 20th and never raised it, or a word was never spoken about it for 9 days in his communications with the Prime Minister. I mean, what else was more important to talk about? Yes, mate.
Please, on the federal election, will you have a campaign plane available for journalists during the course of the campaign? And will you be available to journalists from the Canberra Press Gallery as a matter of transparency throughout the campaign each day?
Did you say plane or plan?
Plane or bus?
Yes. How big a plane would you like?
No, I'll leave up to you.
Right.
Will you
All right.
have-
Well, we can negotiate menus, appointments.
Such a rare
the interior.
opportunity for us to question you in Canberra.
Well,
that's why I'm asking the question.
I think.
Will you be available to the Canberra Press Gallery each day as a matter of participating in democracy and respecting the fourth estate?
I think one of the most exciting aspects of the campaign is that we're going to pull you all out of Canberra, and we're going to move out of this bubble, and we're going to go and talk to real families, and we're going to go and talk to the constituents who are telling me that they are being
and tell them
crushed
about
by
all the
the
laws
cost of
that you
living
guys
crisis
passed over the last
the Prime
12
Minister's
months without
created. And I
anyone
know that
knowing about it.
sometimes there's an opportunity. I was up at Queanbeyan the other day. I think only
Go around and let
Andrew
all the
Ross, were you
families know
there?
about all of the fucking
In Goulburn, was just the two
disgraceful
of you.
pieces of legislation
Sarah
that
was
they
there.
passed
There were three of you. You were all welcome. I think we put
at
it
11
out.
o'clock at
We were
night
there
on a
with
Thursday
girls,
night,
and talking to you.
banning social
wouldn't,
media.
I wouldn't get too excited with that Canberra story.
Let all the families
I'm very
know
happy
that
to
on
take
campaign
questions,
tour.
to speak with you regularly, as I do sometimes off the record as well, and have a pretty good relationship with many of you. So I encourage you more and more to do that. But to speak to those people during the campaign, I think it's going to be a great thing. Andrew,
On the Middle East, so you've been a big supporter of Israel. You've spoken about not wanting to see Hamas regain control of Gaza. You heard President Trump's plan yesterday under a Dutton government. Would you be interested in seeing Australian peacekeepers potentially on the ground in Gaza to help maintain peace, rebuild, stop Hamas gaining strength?
Well, I think the White House has issued a statement, as I understand it, saying that the Americans aren't necessarily talking about boots on the ground, which I think is an important point to make. Look, I made some comments this morning on Ben Fordham's program in relation to this. I just think we have to understand the dynamic. As we saw, the president was moving markets before the inauguration. The president has a very different approach than his predecessors in my memory, and he has a business approach. He has been a negotiator. He's been a deal maker his entire life, and it's created incredible success, obviously, in terms of his own finances and his success in business. And that's the model that he's applied, both in the 45th presidency and obviously now in the 47th as well. We had a very good relationship with the Trump first administration. We'll have a great relationship with the Trump Mark II after the election, and we'll work with them very closely. I think the point the president was making, which is a point all of us, I'm sure, would want to emphasise, is that we want peace in the Middle East. We want Palestinians and Gazans to live in peace. We want their kids to be able to go to school, to do it freely. We want there to be jobs, there to be industry, and for people to be able to lead their lives in the way that they want. And for there to be an absence of the threat to Israel and the threat to others in the region. Iran is still lurking, obviously, with ill intent. And the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia and others, all of that continues to advance. So there are many aspects to the dynamic of what you're seeing in the Middle East at the moment. But in terms of the president's statements yesterday and what can be seen, I think the first point is that we want to see more hostages released. When you see the vision of those young girls coming out from that tunnel network, having been in there for months with listed terrorist organisation members, it's horrifying to think what they would have gone through. And thank goodness they're out now. So hopefully more.
Lovely. So as you can see in the bottom corner, Prime Minister news conference. So it looks like there's a lot going to be going on in the next couple of hours. So if anyone or everyone that's joining me, there's what tells me there's almost 100 people on YouTube and I don't know, maybe a few hundred on X. If everyone can just share this out, because this is going to go on for a couple of hours now. Matt Canavan's actually posted the Senate variation to the order of business. It looks like this is going to come up at around 1:15. However, just like the social media minimum age ban bill, this bill's only been given 1 hour of debate. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So yeah, looks like we've got a bit to go through, and I've got it all here for you guys.
Palestinians and effectively ending Gaza as a place for Palestinians is consistent with the coalition's policy when it comes to two-state solution?
Well, on the first question, that's a question for the Prime Minister, really, isn't it?
But yeah, just share it out, please. Share this out as far as possible. Let everyone know that they're passing bills right now in the next couple of hours to infringe on everyone's freedom of speech again.
The peace can prevail, should be supported from every person, every nation of goodwill. And in relation to the actions of the Americans, I don't believe the Americans have any intent to act outside of international law. I don't think the president, from what I've seen, is talking about forcibly moving people, or I would wait to see the detail of what is released as the discussions continue on, not just with the Israelis, but obviously with the near neighbours, Jordan and Egypt and others, in relation to what role they can play. And I suspect President Trump rightly has an expectation that not just America, but that other countries will contribute to the reconstruction so that people can get their lives back, and hopefully Hamas can be crushed, similarly with Hezbollah, because if that's the case, people in Lebanon have a chance of peace and freedom and stability in their lives, which is exactly what we want to see for the Palestinians, and obviously the removal of that threat to the Israelis as well. Yeah.
Mr. Dunn, oh, sorry, do you still support a two-state solution?
Yes, I do.
You do.
Okay, can I follow up then?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Just in terms then of the coalition's policy moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
would you see your government recognising West Jerusalem again as the capital of Israel?
Well, no, we have no proposals to make any changes to any settings that we've got at the moment. So in relation to the broader issue, I think let's wait and see what plan is proposed, what negotiations take place. And look, I think the other thing that we've got to recognise is that if we do want a better life for Palestinians, we have to accept that here we are in 2025, nothing to this point, not the great work that Tony Blair did or that Bill Clinton did or that Bush 43 and 41 sought to do, and before that has worked. And so let's give every chance to every option that's put forward to give it consideration. Is that going to be the way to help those Palestinian kids? Let's see. Let's see. David? Yeah.
With the desire to see more hostages released, how do you think the idea of the US taking ownership of Gaza is going to encourage Hamas to release more hostages, to stick to the ceasefire plan?
Well, David, I think when you look at the comments of President Trump after November, when he said that he wanted hostages released by the time of his inauguration, it was a pretty bold statement at that time. And I think a lot of people wrote up that his remarks about the retaliatory action or the action that he would take if hostages hadn't been released, people were scornful of those comments and dismissive of them. As it turns out, hostages were released on the eve of his inauguration, and clearly the actions, whatever he had put in place behind the scenes through his envoy to Israel and to Hamas and to others with influence, the Kuwaitis, whoever, I mean, it's obviously had an impact. And all I hope now is that whatever's happening behind the scenes that we're all, not privy to, is going to result in those people, more of those people, particularly young women and girls, being released from those caves. Yes, mate, yeah.
Labor of having a secret 2035 target. But isn't it the case that you'll have to sign Australia up to a 2035 target if you win the election? And if so, why can't you tell us what it is?
Well, that's not the only thing that Labor Party's accused me of course. There are many things that I stand accused of from the Labor Party, so I'd put it in that context. Our judgment is very clear, and we've been very specific in relation to it. We have a target for net zero by 2050. We support renewables in the system, very important point to make, often overlooked by our critics. We support, though, a firming up of that unreliable power, of the part-time power, by reliable power. Now, green hydrogen is not a reality. Investment is backing out of that at 1 million miles an hour, both commercial and government investment. So let's be realistic about the government's plan for 2030 and 2035 and beyond. It's based on a significant element of green hydrogen, which is not commercially viable. It's not. The government's policy on green hydrogen is not scalable, and it's not safe to transport at the moment in the way that they're proposing. So that I think is important to point out in terms of the likelihood of achieving targets. Now, we'll sign up to targets that we believe are in our country's best interests. I do believe that as we get toward 2050, particularly with nuclear coming in 2035, that will allow us a step change, which has been the experience in other countries, which is why many people on the left and many Greens around the world are supportive of nuclear power, because it's zero emissions and it provides the base load required to firm up the renewables in the system. And if you don't like fossil fuels and green hydrogen is not a reality and the battery technology's not as far as advanced as you would want, then I think you're starting to run out of options, which is why Labor's negotiating to extend the life of coal-fired power stations at the moment. And the point that I've made in relation to 2035, to your question, is that we don't have the capacity to model in opposition. The government has a lot of modelling, and you would have expected them to have released their detail of their 2035 target by February. They've chosen not to do that because they don't want to tell Australians about their secret plan, which will jack up the cost of electricity. Labor's 2035 plan has been kept from the Australian public, like the nature positive laws, because it's going to jack up the price of electricity. Electricity is already up by over 30% under this government, and Australian families can't afford more price rises under Labor. And that's why the Prime Minister and Chris Bowen are keeping that detail, which they have from the Australian people. We're in opposition, and I think I've answered that question. Who hasn't answered? Down the back, yeah. Sorry, mate.
Announcement. So you've been critical of the Prime Minister, obviously, for not finding out about this caravan incident. But did Chris Minns make a mistake by not telling him? Because the Premier seems to be getting off scot-free in this.
Well, mate, again, I think these questions should be asked of Premier Minns. And I think Premier Minns did exactly what his predecessors and what the Prime Minister's predecessors have done. And that is, they've said that, today I was advised by the AFP, or yesterday or last week, I was given a briefing in relation to what's a very serious matter. If there's a covert operation underway, then in the briefing, the Commissioner or the Director General says, look, Minister PM, there's an operation underway at the moment. We don't want to say anything publicly, so we'll let you know when you can make a statement. All of that is just normal practice. What's happened here is completely and utterly out of sync with what has happened before. And yes, I think Premier Minns, firstly, was just being honest and transparent with the people of New South Wales, which are not attributes you could attribute to the Prime Minister in this matter. And I think it's reasonable to ask him, well, in your conversations, you didn't say to the Prime Minister when you visited the childcare centre which had been attacked, an act of anti-Semitism that had taken place there, you didn't say on the sidelines, have you heard any more about this matter, or how do you think the police are going, or, it sounds really bad, this briefing I've just had. Nothing, like just radio silence for 9 days. It doesn't stack up, and I think that's the problem.
Volunteered that information?
Well, not if he was advised not to, but that's a question that the Premier can answer. If he knew about it and he didn't raise it with the Prime Minister, well, presumably he's either thinking that this is not an issue worth discussing, but it's an alleged terror attack of significant scale, so you'd think it would jump onto the conversation list, or he's been given advice, don't tell the Prime Minister for whatever reasons. And again, they're questions that Mr Minns could answer, or that the Prime Minister, or hopefully an independent analyst who could look at this objectively and decide from there. Phil?
Can I just ask you a question about the election?
Yes, mate.
Different topic. Just about the sort of current state of play. The bookies have got you at much shorter odds than Labor to win the election. There's been 2 polls in 2 months which shows more voters expect uniform government next election than Anthony Albanese. Are you worried that you're going to lose your underdog status, and do you still think you're the underdog going to the election?
Well, Phil, as you know, we have an enormous job between now and the election. I think we can win the election because of a number of reasons. One is that I think we've demonstrated to the Australian public over the last 2.5 years that we have been a united team. We look like a credible alternative government. We've put pressure on a bad government. We've come up with policies, and we've worked very hard over the course of the last 2.5 years to put the policies together, and we'll release those as we get closer to the election. Second point is that a first-term government hasn't lost since 1931, and the unions will unleash millions of dollars of spending. The CFMEU, despite what they say, will put money into third-party campaigns, and it'll be tough. So are we the underdog in this campaign? Absolutely we are. But I want to win this election because I want to help families. I want to help small businesses. 27,000 small businesses have closed over the course of the last couple of years. Behind every story, there's a family who have lost their home or lost their savings, employees who have now had to find work elsewhere. It's a bad time for our country economically and for those families. And I do want to get our country back on track. And that's the reason we'll be working hard every day up to the election. And as for the bookies, I haven't seen the odds. So maybe you can put $1, not each way, but put $1 on for me, and we can split it at the end.
Just on the floods, just after the Prime
Yes, mate.
Minister's in North Queensland today, he'll miss question time. Is that fair enough? And do you plan to visit the flood zone as well?
Look, I think it's right for the Prime Minister to visit. It's always difficult to know, particularly when the waters haven't receded or people are still right in the thick of it. I made a decision not to go because I just think the emergency workers are still on the ground. People are still dealing with the inundation, and so no, and that's his decision. That's fine. So look, yes, I think it's appropriate for the Prime Minister to go. It's just a question of your timing, and he's made the judgment that now is the time to go. My judgment is probably a bit later, and I've liaised with Phil Thompson on that basis, and that's his advice to me as well. And I'll continue my discussions with the Queensland government as well. But I just made the point in question time. I'll make it again here. We'll provide every support to the government for assistance that's being offered to people in the region. And I do hope that some of the roads are able to be built back better, because all of us living in capital cities wouldn't tolerate that sort of isolation and markets being cut off, trucks being stranded on the side of the road in much lesser rain events than what we've seen, let alone the devastation that's been caused by this one. Yeah. Yes, mate.
Can I ask you on your plans on the public service, please? If you had become Prime Minister, how many public servants from the Department of PMC do you think should be cut, could be cut? And can you give us some clarity exactly on how many of the 36,000 new public servants under this government you would look to cut or hiring freeze? There's been a range of responses from different ministers, different shadow ministers when asked this question.
Well, we'll make announcements in relation to our policies in due course, but I do note that with the 36,000 additional, that brings the public service up to over 200,000. Now, that's much higher than in the Rudd Gillard years. It obviously adds significantly, and I just don't find any Australians who say that it's easier to deal with the government as a result of employing 36,000 more public servants.
What about veterans, Mr. Dutton? What about veterans
I've
who had
been-
to wait 2 years in many cases to receive their benefits, a year to get on the list to be considered, and then a year to have their claims processed? This is for crucial medicines that they were eligible for as soldiers. They then wait 2 years. There was a $6 billion backlog there. Are those the public servants that you'd cut? Presumably not.
No, and I've been clear about that in my statements. We're not cutting frontline positions. I want more money going to frontline services. I want more money going to health and education. I want to make sure that we can get the GPs into areas at the moment where they're not practicing. They're small businesses that have been crushed by the costs of running a practice, and it's why we've made announcements in relation to putting more money into GP training. I want more. GPs access money that otherwise, in a finite budget, can be spent on public servants, or it can be spent on providing support through Medicare item numbers to make it more attractive to get GPs into regions. So, sorry, I'll just deal with this question. Sorry, mate.
Would you offer redundancies, Mr. Dutton, or would it be a hiring freeze?
I'm happy to make the announcement at the time, but I've been clear, we're not having 36,000 additional public servants in Canberra. We're not.
Will Australians have those costings before the election?
Yeah, of course they will.
Because that wasn't clear on Sunday.
Jason, last one. Yep.
Would you be prepared to make a commitment to limit spending on consultants?
Well, we've said clearly that we will cut back on wasteful spending. And if there is wasteful spending taking place, then it should be cut. And that's what's going to get our economy back on track. It's what's going to allow us to pay for the services in the NDIS, in defence, in veterans, and many other portfolios that people expect. And there's no sense pretending that you can continue to jack up the government expenditure, to give people tax cuts that they desire, to have a downward pressure on inflation. I want to get inflation down. And to get inflation down, which is how we get interest rates down, but how we get the other cost pressures down as well. It's food that's up by 12%. It's rents that are up by over 17%. All of that is as a result of the inflation that's in the economy at the moment. And if we want to bring downward pressure on all of those costs, as the Reserve Bank Governor points out, the government has to stop spending money at the rate it is at the moment. And Australians aren't stupid, not falling for this, Jim Chalmers smoke and mirrors trick. I want to manage the economy successfully, which is what my predecessors have done. And as Assistant Treasurer to Peter Costello and working closely, obviously, in the Howard government, we were able to clean up Labor's mess when Hawke and Keating left. And we will clean up Labor's mess again. We'll get our economy and our country back on track. If we do that, we can support families and we can see the economy grow again and help those families who are really under pressure because of the Albanese cost of living crisis at the moment. Thank you very much.
Opposition Leader Peter Dutton there with a lengthy news conference, about 50 minutes or thereabouts, with the Canberra Press Gallery taking questions from all and sundry on a range of issues. We'll have more on a few of those matters, including the call for an independent inquiry into what the Prime Minister knew and when about the caravan terror plot. We'll have more on that shortly. First, though, Labor's looking to push through tax changes to super accounts exceeding $3 million. Prime Minister.
Okay, let's keep an eye on Albo because he's going to do a press conference shortly. All right. Quick little recap. I had a great question on Instagram come up earlier, and this is going to be a quiz question for all you guys. Here we go. Okay. So the question that I got was, why didn't you guys bring this up when it was introduced? So, question for everyone that's watching right now. It was introduced and read 12th of September 2024. The question is, what were we all collectively focused on at around that time that made us distracted from this? Whoever gets it first in the comments, I'll star your comment and I'll bring it up. What were we all collectively distracted by? There we go. There's your answer. Yeah, now you guys are getting it. And then immediately after that, that one. Yeah. We're going to need a bigger team of people to keep an eye on all these pieces of legislation because the government is very good at distracting and pulling stunts like this off. But yeah, I mean, It's really difficult. These guys are professionals at doing this crap. Okay, so that was that. So that's with regards to the bill, and that answers that question about why it wasn't brought up when it was introduced originally. However, the bill was introduced before a lot of these hate crimes and anti-Semitic attacks, as they're calling it, were at the scale that have brought us to where we are right now. The first one happened, I think it was the 6th of December, the Adass Synagogue in Melbourne. So this was what, September it was introduced, October, November, December. So 3 months in between. So it wasn't an issue while we were distracted by the misinformation bill and the social media under 16s bill. However, when it became a convenient storyline for them to push, that's when it came to our attention. And we're going to have to look at those bills before Parliament all the time and flag crap that comes our way straight away. The only problem with the bills before Parliament is this. I'll show you. Bills before Parliament. The amount of pieces of legislation that they have before Parliament is just outrageous. 137 bills before Parliament. 325 bills were passed. And 72 bills weren't proceeding. There's still 137 bills to pass between now and when the election gets called. Who's going to go through goddamn over 100 bills just to make sure that none of them are infringing on our freedom of speech? We're gonna have to get a bigger team on this, man. So there's that. Next thing is Matt Canavan's update. So thank you to Matt Canavan for posting this, because they don't really update order of business once they've published, but they do give updates to the senators, obviously, in the chamber. So they shoehorned the criminal code amendment for the hate speech laws at 10:30. However, they're currently doing divisions on other bills right now. The bill that they are doing a division on right now is with regards to Papua New Guinea, introduced by Senator Shoebridge. So, I mean, God knows what that's about, but nothing with regards to the hate speech laws right now. Back to Matt Canavan. He goes, the hate speech laws are set to be rushed through the Senate today at lunchtime. The government plans once again to make a major change to the freedom of speech with almost zero debate in the Senate. What is the point of our parliament? And this post here says that the Criminal Code Amendment Hate Crimes Bill 2024 was called at 10:30. So that was Michaela Cash. She was talking about it at the start. And then they suspended the order for the remaining divisions that they're currently going through. And then they're going to allot 1 hour of time for discussion on this bill, which is the equivalent of the amount of time that we got on the social media minimum age bill. For those that joined me on that mega stream in November, the same amount of time, 1 hour. We were at 10 o'clock when they started, I think, and then they pushed it until 11:30 to around midnight that night to pass the social media ban bill, which actually, just FYI, actually will become active law this year, at the end of this year. The question on all remaining stages of the Criminal Code Amendment will be put at 1:15, so a bit over an hour, and then they'll have a division, so they'll vote on it at 1:30 to 2 p.m. So in the next couple of hours, guys, this bill will become law, and I'm almost certain it'll get royal assent, like straight away. Like it'll just be given to the governor, boom, stamp, sign, law, real quick. For those that are wondering, I will pull up the House live stream and I'll show you how quickly they passed the bill through the House of Reps. So I'll keep an eye out on the Senate. And while that's going on, I'll show you guys the crap that they did in the House. Let's see what... I'm not even going to say the word or the term because I'm probably going to get done for a bloody defamation case. But you know exactly what she's all about after the things that she said in the last couple of days. I ain't going to say anything, but you guys know. Let's see what
These
she's
problems
talking
at
about.
its source. This legislation, as the government seeks to pass it, will not address fundamentally the information asymmetry that exists between banks and their consumers. There are measures that we can put in place to create a race to...
Okay, she's talking about a scam prevention framework bill 2024. Okay, so it was the first thing that they spoke about after the education minister around here.
Moved by the honourable member for Wentworth be agreed to. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the noes have it. Noes have it. The fourth unresolved question is the amendments 2 to 10 and 12 moved by the honourable member for Wentworth be agreed to. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the noes have it. The fifth unresolved question is that the opposition amendments 1 to 4 on sheet 3 be agreed to. The question is the amendments be agreed to. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. The question now is that this bill as amended be agreed to. Give the call to the Leader of... No. The question is that the bill be as amended be agreed to. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. This bill as amended has been agreed to. I give the call to the Leader of the House.
Leave of the House to move the third reading immediately.
Is leave granted? Give the call to the member for Gippsland. Leave is granted. Give the call to the Leader of the House.
I move that this bill be read a third time.
I'll put the question. Just before I go to the next item, give the member the call. The Leader of the House.
Move the question be put.
The question before the House is the question be put. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Noes have it. Division required. Ring the bells for 4 minutes.
All right, so they had a division for 4 minutes, and then look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. Look how many is on the yes side. Look how many is on the no side. So I'm just recapping the House while we're waiting for the Senate. The Senate debate will be good. Matt Canavan will probably have some interesting things to say. Can't wait to see who's against it and what they say. The one thing that they hate is that we are watching now. We are watching every goddamn move that they make. Even if we're a bit late, we're still watching. But yeah, that's the yes side. It's a lot of people. There's so many people that they have to stand up. A lot of people. There's not a seat available by the looks of it. And then there's just a couple of people here, a few handful. couple of independents, a couple of teals.
Lock the doors. The question be put. The ayes will pass the right of the chair and the noes to the left. Appoint the honourable members for Werriwa and Bean as tellers for the ayes, and the honourable members for Griffith and Brisbane as tellers for the noes.
All right, listen to the numbers. I already posted, but listen to the numbers. Overwhelming bipartisan support. So if you think the Liberal Party is going to help you,
The result of the division is ayes 117, noes 13. The matter was resolved in the affirmative. The question now before the House is the bill be now read a third time. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye, against no. I think the ayes have it, and I call the clerk.
Third reading, a bill for an act to amend the Criminal Code Act 1995 and for related purposes.
Members can leave the chamber as quickly and as quietly as possible.
okay, so the numbers were massive. I'll show you the division here. So bang. So 117 yes, 13 no. I posted it on my X page, so if anyone wants to find it there. But these are the people that voted yes. So yes, 62 Labor Party members. If you're wondering why Albo isn't on here, it's because he's in Queensland right now, building back better. Liberal Party 25. So this is Federal Liberal Party 25. You've got David Coleman, Shadow Communications Minister, the dude that looked like he was on coke during the social media ban bill. That video that we made go viral. Paul Fletcher, he's retiring. Who else? Julian Lisa, he's actually my MP. Julian Lisa, I'm personally going to make sure that I get as many people to get you out, because you're my member of parliament. Susan Ley, I mean, what do you expect from her? Who else? No one else important. No one else of that much significance. Liberal Party of Queensland, so Liberal National Party of Queensland. David Littleproud, of course. Peter Dutton. So there's your alternative Prime Minister right there. You guys want to vote for Peter Dutton? He voted for the social media ban. His party helped introduce the misinformation bill, and then he voted for this. So there's your opposition, guys. I'm gonna have to come up with a word that means opposition but isn't the word opposition. I can't refer to this guy as opposition leader anymore. But I don't like the term uni party. I need another term. Nationals. I mean, god damn it, freaking Broadbent, Russell Broadbent. He put a video out a couple of days ago saying that I'm gonna run again in the House this year at the upcoming election, and then Broadbent does this. I can't help you, Broadbent. What are you doing? Alan Joyce. Did I say Alan Joyce? Friggin' Barnaby Joyce. Why did I say Alan Joyce? Barnaby Joyce. friggin' broadband. I was so close to sharing that video the other day. I'm so glad I didn't. And then for those that are wondering, the Greens voted against it. How's the nose here? So Greens voted against it, but the reason why the Greens voted against it is because they wanted the provision for the mandatory minimum sentences to get taken out. That's the only reason. Otherwise, they would have voted for it. So don't think the Greens are doing anything noble. The reason why the independents, I know one of them put out a statement, I think it was her, put out a statement. The reason why that they voted against it is because they don't want the mandatory minimum sentences to be in the bill. They're concerned about the separation of powers being infringed on. But I mean, the separation of powers between the House and the Senate have already been infringed on because all they have to do is just have bipartisan support on a bill, and there's no division of powers. There's no scrutiny on bills. It's just like, yep, we got the numbers, open slather, pass it. So it's kind of a waste of time. They're frauds, if anything, to say that they care about the separation of powers when the integrity of the Senate and the House having a separation of powers between the two, the Senate being the House of Review for legislation, doesn't even have its own separation of powers because all bills need is just for both major parties to support legislation, and then it goes through. It either gets guillotined, it'll mostly get guillotined, or it gets debated on for a little bit, and then they just pass it anyway. Okay, so we've got an hour, but we've also got Katie Gallagher yapping. Let's see what she's yapping on about.
So the question is, the motion is moved by the minister be agreed to. Order. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, I believe the ayes have it. Do we have any messages? Thank you. The President has received a message from the House of Representatives forwarding the Defence Services Homes Amendment Insurance Bill 2025 for concurrence. I call the Minister.
That this bill may proceed without formalities and be now read a first time.
So the question is, the motion is moved by the minister be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, I believe the ayes have it. I call the clerk.
Bill for an act to amend the Defence Service Homes Act 1918 and validate certain activities and arrangements and for related purposes.
Minister.
Thank you. I move that this bill be now read a second time, and I seek leave to have the second reading speech incorporated in Hansard.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted. Thank you. Minister.
I move that the debate be now adjourned.
So the question is that the motion is moved by the minister be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, I believe the ayes have it. The President has received a message from the House of Representatives forwarding the Free TAFE Bill 2024 for concurrence. Minister.
Thank you. I move that this bill may proceed without formalities and be now read a first time.
So the question is, the motion is moved by the minister be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, I believe the ayes have it. I call the clerk.
Bill for an act relating to financial assistance to the states, the ACT and the Northern Territory in connection with the provision of free TAFE and vocational education and training places and for related purposes.
Minister.
Thank you. I move that this bill be now read a second time, and I seek leave to have the second reading speech incorporated in Hansard.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
There we go.
In accordance with the Standing Order 1153.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to live in Australia for that much longer, honestly. I don't think I'm going to be able to keep up with all of these rules and laws with regards to free speech. Yeah, I know, Julian Lisa. I know, definitely. I know. I've known that for a little while. As soon as I identified him as my my local member, I knew that straight away that he was, yeah. But I'm thinking I'm gonna have to dip out of Australia for a bit. Because I don't want to go to jail again. I got thrown in jail for organizing anti-lockdown protests. So I'm definitely on their list. And I just can't keep up with this crap anymore. I mean, I'm thinking it would definitely be America. And then I'd probably try to link up with some people there that are doing political commentary and just try to get around learning how to what's the term? Assimilate with their culture, of their way of life, and then just build out a little mini makeshift studio and just chill there with protected free speech for a few years. I don't think Australia has much hope anymore, honestly. Peter Dutton is an absolute disgrace. The fact that he's no longer an opposition party leader, he's just a party leader. Criminal code, here we go.
You have not even hesitated.
You can't be serious. She's the first person to speak about
Thank you.
it.
And in my closing remarks, this legislation is an important step in combating the anti-Semitism crisis that Australia has today. The coalition
They got Marine Faruqi to talk about this first. Wow.
are pleased that the government has agreed.
It's going to speed it up quickly so we
The
can catch
final
up to
piece of
live.
legislation before the Senate today is the result of the strong leadership of the Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton. Thanks to the work of the Coalition standing up to anti-Semitism across Australia, the Labor Party, it's taken them some time, as recently as only the 3rd of February, Senator Watt was saying they didn't support mandatory sentencing, and yet here we are today. They have finally capitulated to some strong measures to ensure those in our community who are committing terrorism offences are punished appropriately. The Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton, has once again led the way on a crucial issue of national security and social cohesion.
Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak on behalf of the Greens on the Criminal Code Amendment Hate Crimes Bill 2024. Well, here we are, a Prime Minister Albanese special again, capitulating to Mr. Dutton and letting him run the government's agenda, his government's agenda, in a race to the bottom with the Liberals. Say one thing and do the other again. This is what Labour has become under Prime Minister Albanese, a hollow shell that stands for nothing. They are so afraid of Mr. Dutton and his Trump-like politics that they have no qualms whatsoever in doing a complete 180 on mandatory minimum sentences. Get a backbone, Labour. Be leaders. But I think that's just too much to ask from you. You are a lost cause. You have not even hesitated whatsoever in introducing mandatory minimum sentencing laws that are incompatible with human rights, that are discriminatory, and that will make no one safer. 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister said there were issues with mandatory minimum sentencing as it could be counterproductive. Just 2 days ago, Minister Watt confirmed there would be no minimum mandatory sentencing. But last night, at the 11th hour, you all capitulated, did a dirty deal with the Liberals on mandatory minimum sentences.
And for those that are wondering, it was at the 11th hour. Federation Chamber was up until about 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. before they finally came to a agreement.
Is ripping up. You are ripping up your own platform here. And Labour is helping Mr. Dutton bring Trump-style politics right here to this country. And you know what? The type of politics that Trump is playing is horrific. Mr. Dutton is a man who, after Trump's proposal to effectively ethnically cleanse Gaza, praised him for being a big thinker. That's who you're doing these dirty deals with. Labour didn't need to do this. Like we said at the start of the week, that we would support.
Here we go with the Trump shit. I got to clip this stuff. I'm just going to mute myself.
Peter Dutton. We have legal expert after legal expert telling us that mandatory minimum sentencing simply does not work because it takes judicial decisions out of the hands of the judges and the courts and into the hands of politicians. And no one wants that and no one needs that. The Australian Law Reform Commission has highlighted that mandatory minimum sentences are discriminatory and a breach of our international human rights obligations. The Law Council of Australia President Juliana Warner has said that mandatory sentencing laws are arbitrary and limit the individual's right to a fair trial. Australians Lawyers Alliance spokesperson Greg Barnes has said that there is simply no evidence to support mandatory sentencing. We do, however, have extensive evidence that mandatory sentences disproportionately and unfairly target First Nations people and other targeted communities and people of colour. Go and speak to any community lawyer or peak legal body, and they will categorically tell you that mandatory sentences are unjust, they are inappropriate, and they are extremely discriminatory. Politicians are not in a position to understand the individual circumstances of each case, and there is no justifying politicians intervening in judicial discretion. But here we are. The bill that Labour introduced in Parliament, the bill that was scrutinised by the Senate committee, was a step towards increasing protections for marginalised groups. In particular, the addition of gender, sexuality, and disability as protected attributes are long overdue and much needed changes. These additions send an important message at a time of continuing attacks on our LGBTQIA+ community, particularly trans people. Equally, the addition of disability as a protected attribute is a crucial step to combating ableism and discrimination faced by disabled people. And the Greens support protections against hate crimes. But we have very deep and very serious concerns, as I said earlier, about the addition of mandatory minimum sentences now introduced by Labour. Labour, once again, Labour buckling to the extreme demands of Dutton's Liberals. Hate, bigotry, racism, and discrimination, very sadly, have become a part of everyday life for too many people in our communities. First Nations peoples, of course, have been subjected to this since colonization almost 250 years ago. Muslims have been subjected to hate and racism pretty relentlessly for the last 25 years as Islamophobia has kept rising. And recently, we have seen terrible anti-Semitism. But genuinely,
I can't
combating
deal with this
hate and
crap
violence in our communities
anymore.
cannot be resolved by criminal law and
Oh,
criminal law alone.
we need a double
Indeed, the
dissolution,
criminal
man.
justice system is ill-equipped to protect against hate, with its own history
We
of
need a
targeting
double
queer
dissolution
communities,
so
First Nations
badly.
people, and other culturally and racially marginalized communities. And this was confirmed in the National Anti-Racism Framework, which was finally completed late last year, which said and identified the criminal justice system as a sector where racism is especially present and requires urgent attention.
Please, Governor, please,
What
please,
is
please,
needed
double dissolution.
is revolutionary social change,
Please, for the love,
where racism
love
and
of
white
God,
supremacy are called
we
out
need a
for
double
what they are,
dissolution.
a scourge in our society, where queer people are able to feel safe and live their lives without judgment or discrimination, and where our environment, our buildings, our workplaces, and schools and universities are accessible and welcoming to all. This kind of change is not going to come easily, and it's not going to come through mandatory minimum sentencing. To be effective, responses to hate and racism must be community-led. They must be grassroots, and they must dismantle the ingrained structures of white supremacy. The National Anti-Racism Framework also rightly identifies that the Australian government should explore and fund community-informed and early intervention solutions beyond civil and criminal penalties to address far-right extremism and white supremacy in communities, particularly as they intersect with other forms of discrimination. And the Greens and I have been calling out the rise of right-wing extremism, white supremacy, and
Here we go.
neo-Nazism for a very long time, including right here in my first speech in the chamber 7 years ago, when I said the existence of racism, sexism, and other discrimination is not new. But what has changed is its legitimization, normalization, and encouragement in the media and in politics. Political leaders, in addition to their old habit of racist dog whistling, are now comfortable outright fanning the flames of racial conflict.
Right,
And that,
here we go.
in part, led to the most deadly and violent attack in our region, which was the Christchurch Mosque Massacre, where 51 Muslims were murdered in cold blood by an Australian neo-Nazi. But has this country reckoned at all with those murders? No, you haven't. As you haven't reckoned with the discrimination, the racism, the oppression and dispossession of First Nations people and the violence that still goes on. And unfortunately, 7 years since then, since I said that, things have only become worse. Politicians from major parties continue their racist dog whistling, punching down on migrants and people of color, and cover their own abject failures to address the housing crisis and cost of living crisis. And with Trump now in the Oval Office,
Here
the
we go.
risks posed to minorities have become even greater. I mean, Trump's actions have already emboldened racist, ableist, homophobic filth everywhere. And his right-hand man, Elon Musk, is actively peddling white supremacist and Nazi views. This was on show for all to see when he gave a double Nazi salute at the Trump inauguration. But not a peep out of anyone here. You so-called leaders who talk about hate and racism, not a peep out of you. And I'm yet to hear condemnation or even criticism of Donald Trump's proposal to effectively ethnically cleanse Gaza. The events in the US do have a flow-on effect here and everywhere, where we have seen neo-Nazi rallies as recently as January in Adelaide, and households receiving despicable racist material in their letterboxes. This is no surprise. This is no surprise when you see the leader of the opposition peddling anti-immigrant hate, fear-mongering, and reading from his own MAGA playbook. And then we have the Prime Minister. We have the Prime Minister who capitulates to the opposition every time on migration, and is so hypocritical. This Labour government is so hypocritical, has such double standards. And that is what is allowing the division and fear-mongering to continue. Labour and Mr. Albanese are so scared of the opposition that they either just want to remain silent or be led by the opposition. Like, what is the point of you being in government, truly? And the Greens have been the only political party to take racism seriously. We have a dedicated anti-racism portfolio. The recent spate of anti-Semitic attacks across the country are abhorrent. And we must call them out, as we must call out every single form of racism. I mean, for the last 1.5 years, there has been an onslaught of hate and racism directed at Arabs, at Muslims, at Palestinians. And my colleagues from the two old parties just don't seem to understand that at all, or just want to ignore that. The weaponization and the politicization of anti-Semitism from politicians makes no one safer, including the Jewish community. And can I just say, it is not anti-Semitic to call for an end to a genocide. So stop weaponizing and politicizing racism. In the last 1.5 years, we have seen immense grief for the Muslim community, for Arabs and Palestinians, and so many more in the community who just want justice and peace. But despite this onslaught of abuse and vitriol they have received, they have kept coming out week after week, calling for an end to violence, calling for anti-racism, calling for peace. Of course, there is a growing fear that our world is being overcome with hate and with violence. And it is hard not to fear this when we are here in Parliament, where the fear-mongering and division goes on. But that means actually acting and using tools which are effective in tackling hate and racism. And that does not include mandatory minimum sentencing. So the Greens will be moving a motion. We will be moving a motion to delete these egregious mandatory minimum sentences from the bill. We will also be moving an amendment for a review by the Australian Human Rights Commission, the Australian Law Reform Commission, the Australian Law Reform Commission, for these laws to be reviewed by them. And we will be moving, if the deletion, which is obviously is going to be the case, sadly, deletion of the mandatory minimum sentences doesn't get up, then we want a sunset clause on these sentences, because they are cruel and they are discriminatory. We will also be moving an amendment, as the community has suggested, to change the language of sex characteristics. I know Labor opposed that amendment in the other house, but I hope that you have reflected on that and will support the community in the changes that you are asking, that they are asking for. And can I just say, my time is up, so stop there.
Thank you, Senator Canavan.
Thank you very much, Madam Acting Deputy President. Look, I understand and support the intent behind these amendments. We should all
Come on,
deplore,
Matt.
violent conduct, and it should be and is a crime to incite violence. This bill seeks to expand the number of groups that is a crime to target for incitement of violence, and I, in principle, have no problem with that, although shouldn't it be a crime to incite violence against anyone? The bill also removes the good faith defence against a charge of incitement to violence. Again, in principle, it's hard to fathom how you could incite violence in good faith, although I would make the point that many of us have probably referred to the need to destroy or decimate our political opponents when, of course, we are only using those verbs rhetorically, not literally. This point raises the issue that words can have different meanings to different people, and we should be very clear about what the words mean in the criminal code, because people can go to jail for offences under it. The Senate was told during the committee process by the Attorney General's Department that the words force and violence in this bill are intended to refer to physical force or physical violence against a person. The problem, of course, is that there are numerous examples of where the intention of this Parliament has been overridden by new interpretation by our courts, and there is clearly a risk here. There are many people that view speech as a form of violence. You hear it constantly today. And it's not hard to consider that there would be people that seek prosecutions in the future on the basis that a good faith position, say on the effects of transgender surgery or the benefits of heterosexual monogamy, are seen as violent acts in and of themselves. This is where the removal of a good faith defence could otherwise weaponise dormant provisions of the criminal code. So if it's our intent to restrict these matters to physical force or violence, I don't understand why we can't simply make that black and white in the law. I have drafted an amendment to give effect to that, very simple amendment, which just makes clear in the definitions of the criminal code that force means physical force and violence means physical violence. And keep in mind, even if the courts weren't to misinterpret these words in a different way, even just the prospect of this ambiguity could give rise to inequity and lawfare. There are many innocent individuals right now in our country that are having their lives ruined by being hauled through our courts by well-funded activist groups simply for expressing an opinion. The punishment is the process, not the final verdict. And this is having a chilling effect on free speech in Australia, which is weakening what should be a vibrant and robust debate on many important issues, such as women's rights and the welfare of children. In no way should debate about what is right for a child should be limited by the hurt feelings of an adult. I want to make another point too that goes beyond this bill. We are here again with yet another gag order going in place. We just did this last time we were here. At least last time we stayed a little bit late to give some debate to issues. This time we're going to gag debate in the middle of the day so we can all go home early.
Come on, Matt.
This should be an
Say my
absolute
name again.
embarrassment to us as
Mention the
senators.
stream. Come on.
As it stands, the House of Representatives, the other chamber, the other place, will debate this bill for much, much longer than we will. Now, that is an embarrassment to us, and it's an affront to our Constitution, which has appointed this chamber as the so-called House of Review. We are not doing our constitutional duty by using and abusing these gag orders that let us not knock off early from work, especially in this regard when it goes to a bill which can put people in jail if they transgress it. It's a serious act, and it requires a much greater serious consideration than just the hour of debate or so that we've allocated here today. I understand the urgent need to respond to the shocking anti-Semitic attacks that we have seen over the past year, but we need to be very careful here. Some of these changes imply that these attacks are inspired by intemperate rhetoric of other Australians. We really actually don't know if that's the case. It may very well be, but there's a lot we don't know about why and how these attacks are occurring. Those that have been apprehended for these attacks thus far hardly fit the profile of someone that's been radicalised by religious sermons or someone that has maybe just signed up to their local chapter of the Nazi Party. Some people imply that, but that's not who they seem to be. Their profiles would appear to be much more fitting some tragic souls that have ended up running with druggie or bikie gangs. The Australian Federal Police have explicitly stated that they are concerned that these people committing these heinous acts are effectively mercenaries being paid by foreign actors to sow discord in our country. If this is true, I worry that our rushed and hasty response here only advances the goals of such foreign actors if they exist. By rushing these changes, we are accepting or implying that there is some rotten core in our society that do not only hold bigoted and racist views, but are able to inspire other Australians to commit acts of violence based on these views. We are effectively admitting what these foreign agents are trying to do to our country. The result, of course, would be that we actually end up with a more divided country and be less harmonious and less trusting of each other. We should not be playing into their hands. We should be pursuing those that have committed, inspired or funded these horrific acts under our existing laws, which provide ample opportunity to do that. And if we need to make further changes to strengthen those laws, we should do so in a considered fashion that does not treat this parliament and this chamber as a rubber stamp. I'm very proud of Australia. I believe we are the most harmonious country in the world, and that despite all our differences, we very rarely see any resort to violence. Let us not become any different by just assuming that we are so.
Senator Pocock.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. And I want to thank Senator Canavan for many of his comments about the lack of process on what is a really important bill before us that will have far-reaching consequences. The government has created an alarming habit of linking really good reforms with incredibly problematic policy, as well as curtailing opportunities to consult with experts and the community that we're in here to represent on major legislative changes. This time, they're adding mandatory minimum sentences to a bill that was all about protecting vulnerable members of our community from hate crimes and rushing it through Parliament in a single day. As Senator Canavan said, the Senate will have less time to debate this bill than the House of Representatives. To be clear, this is an important bill that is urgently needed. Like so many others in this place and in our community, I condemn hate speech in all its forms. Everyone in our community deserves to be safe to practice their faith openly and without fear. This bill is designed to make that happen. What experts have said won't be effective, though, is the mandatory minimum sentencing provisions that have been added in a late-night deal with the coalition. What faith leaders and others in my community are telling me is that these issues should be above politics. Yet time and again, they are being politicised and used to drive division. People convicted of hate crimes must absolutely be held to account, but it is the judiciary who should set the penalties on a case-by-case basis. Less than a month ago, the Law Council of Australia published an article titled, "You know what makes unsafe communities? Mandatory minimum sentencing." According to the former president of the Law Council, Greg McIntyre, SC, the Law Council of Australia has consistently opposed the use of mandatory sentencing regimes and indeed has adopted a formal policy against them. He goes on to say mandatory sentencing laws are inherently arbitrary and limit an individual's right to a fair trial by preventing judges from imposing an appropriate penalty based on the unique circumstances of each case. The Australian Law Reform Commission also opposes the policy, saying evidence suggests that mandatory sentencing increases incarceration. It's costly and is not effective as a crime deterrent. Mandatory sentencing may also disproportionately affect particular groups within society. International law is equally clear. There is a prohibition on arbitrary detention, Article 9 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the principle that children should only be detained as a last resort and for the shortest appropriate period of time in Article 37B of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. And perhaps most strikingly, at page 87 of the current Labor Party platform, it states, Labor opposes mandatory sentencing. This practice does not reduce crime, but does undermine the independence of the judiciary.
Hey, everyone that's watching on X, I just posted a clip of Marine Faruqi taking another shot at Elon Musk. Can everyone share it? And not only share it, tag Elon Musk in it, because we need the big dogs to, like, I'm not going to say save us, but like help us, because we're kind of drowning at the moment and under all this crap. So I've just posted a video of Faruqi having a go at Elon Musk. So if everyone that's watching on X, there's probably a couple of thousand people now on X. I found a thing that shows me a bit more of a concurrent viewers. So there's probably a couple of thousand people watching at the moment, which is awesome. If everyone can just quickly click out and repost the video and then tag Musk in it, because we need some help, man.
Examples of mandatory sentences that have been handed down and applied with anomalous and unjust results. When adopted, mandatory sentencing fails to produce convincing evidence to demonstrate that increases of these sorts of penalties actually deter any crime. In 2017, now Minister Jones said, Parliament, in fact, is usurping the judicial discretion by introducing mandatory minimum sentencing. It actually sends, as the former DPP of New South Wales said, a vote of no confidence from the Parliament to the judiciary. And despite all this opposition to mandatory minimum sentences, the Labor Party's opposition to mandatory minimum sentences, I assume the rank and file Labor members' opposition to mandatory minimum sentences, I assume most Labor voters' opposition to mandatory minimum sentences. Here we are. The government has capitulated to the coalition's politically motivated demands to add something that experts tell us doesn't work, to add something to a bill that I think had fairly broad support amongst the community, something that people acknowledged the Parliament needs to act on this. And in all of this, the communities that need the substance of the original bill are being overlooked. The Muslim community, the LGBTI community, the Jewish community, people with a disability, and so many people who experience racism and bigotry have been desperate for protections contained in this bill for so many years. They've been abused and subject to hate speech in our streets and in our public spaces. And that's why this bill is important. They want to see this bill pass. But this practice from the government of corrupting positive reforms,
It's David Pocock.
with terrible policy, has to stop. Australians deserve better.
Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I know time is brief and there's still other senators on the speaking list, and I don't want to take away their opportunity to make a contribution, so I will also be brief and make a couple of points. It is a good thing that this bill will pass the Parliament today. It will send a strong message to those who are responsible for the attacks, in particular against the Jewish community in recent months, that there are very real consequences for their behaviour, that the Parliament of Australia does not tolerate it, and that we want them to feel the full force of the law to deter them from engaging in any more terrorisation of the Jewish community. But it is a shame that this legislation did not pass earlier. Senator Cash and I wrote to the Attorney-General and the Minister for Home Affairs before Christmas. This bill was introduced in September. We offered them bipartisan support to pass this legislation before Christmas because we were concerned about what might happen over the summer to our Jewish community. Unfortunately, our worst fears were realised and a summer of terror was unleashed against the Jewish community, starting with the firebombing of the Adass Israel Synagogue and continuing with the firebombing of cars, the targeting of homes, even the firebombing of our childcare centre, among others, including small businesses. And it left our Jewish community terrorised. It would have been very good had these laws already been on the books.
Hey, I'm not just saying this for a laugh. Everyone on X, please repost the video and tag Elon Musk in it. We have less than an hour to maybe get some intervention from him if he sees this. So click out of the stream quickly, go to my page, repost the video, tag Elon Musk, and let's hope for a miracle. We need intervention as quick as possible, and I don't care if it comes from a foreign actor. Help us, Elon.
Advocating violence against places of worship and other institutions significant to people of faith, including religious schools and religious centres. None of that would have happened if it wasn't for Peter Dutton and the Coalition. All of those were demands that we made of the government. All of those were demands that the government initially said were unreasonable and unnecessary. It was only Tuesday in this chamber that Labor senators voted against a motion calling for the introduction of mandatory minimum sentences. It was only last week that the Prime Minister dismissed the need for mandatory minimum sentences. It was only 2 days ago that Minister Watt said that mandatory minimum sentences were not part of Labor's policy or platform and they would not be introduced. This is yet another example of the Coalition leading the government on national security and community safety. Because their instincts are not right the first time, they have to be pressured publicly into taking the tough decisions necessary to protect our community. And it is yet more of an example of why the weak leadership of the Prime Minister cannot continue, or our country will get further off track. Only the strong leadership of Peter Dutton Coalition government can deal with these crises, because Peter Dutton does have the right instincts. He does understand the seriousness of the disaster that we're facing in our country, and he is willing to make the tough decisions to act. He won't need to be pressured into acts like this to send a strong signal to people undermining social cohesion and community safety in our country. He will do it because he believes in it. And if you're going to have a strong leader, you might as well have the real one, not one who's a pale imitation of it.
Senator Shoebridge.
Thanks, Acting Deputy. We're at a remarkable position here. The Labor government introduced a bill, initial bill, that had enormous support across the community. That was an actual response to some of the appalling racist attacks that we've seen against Jewish community, particularly in my home city of Sydney, that would have dealt with some of the ongoing, persistent, appalling attacks against the LGBTIQ plus community, that would have given some comfort to those in our multicultural community who have been attacked because of their Muslim faith. There was an opportunity here to present legislation that would have brought us together and made real and important protections that would have promoted community safety and could have stepped against division. And it had gone through good process and had been well considered. And then, because they have been led by the nose by the Coalition in their ongoing divisive, aggressive, far-right Trumpian attack on basic things like the rule of law and common decency in politics, because they've been dragged there by the Coalition, they have decided, midnight last night, to ram into this legislation a whole series of noxious, unwarranted, damaging provisions about criminal penalties with mandatory minimum sentences. Labor has taken something good that we knew would work, that had widespread support amongst the legal fraternity, communities across the country, and they've rammed into it mandatory minimum sentences because they're scared of the Coalition. They are running, we have a government that's been driven by the opposition, scared of standing up for what they know is right, this government. And we know that Labor Party members, thousands and thousands of Labor Party members, are offended by what the Albanese government is doing because they've included it, forced it on Labor politicians by including it in Labor's own policy platform. Labor's own policy platform rightfully opposes mandatory sentences. And I'll just read it. Labor opposes mandatory sentencing. This practice does not reduce crime, but does undermine the independence of the judiciary, lead to unjust outcomes, and is often discriminatory in practice. And time after time in the last 12 months, we've had elected Labor senators and members of parliament come out and say they oppose mandatory sentencing. They oppose mandatory sentencing because it tears down the independence of the judiciary. It replaces a careful consideration by a judge who can take all the circumstances of someone's life, the nature of the offending into account, and craft a sentence that actually is just and destroys independence of judiciary, replaces a politician's opinion for that of a judge when it comes to criminal sentencing. They've said it time after time, and every time that's been right, because mandatory sentencing attacks the independence of judiciary. It tears down one of the core tenets of our society that I thought this place would unite around, rule of law. And that we have penalties decided not by politicians, but by judges. But because they are so utterly spineless, utterly unable to make a principled argument and take a stand against the opposition, they literally cave in the small hours of last night. And it's not just Labor's own platform. And I want to be clear, Greens' platform has said consistently, we will oppose mandatory sentencing. The Law Council in 2020, the Law Council of Australia, not exactly the most left-wing organisation in the country. The Law Council said mandatory minimum sentences are abhorrent to the whole notion of sentencing, where judicial discretion is essential and can result in perverse jury decisions. Now, what does that last bit mean, perverse jury decisions? That actually means if you want to put people who have committed these offences behind bars, then don't do mandatory sentencing. Because if the jury knows that this person is absolutely going to go to jail for 6 years or 7 years or whatever the mandatory minimum is, and they're a bit troubled about the nature of the evidence, and they may be thinking, well, it wasn't that bad, or whatever a jury might be thinking about the issue in front of them, then what the Law Council is saying is there will be inevitably less convictions if you have mandatory sentencing. And I'd say that applies not just to juries, but to judges as well. And the courts are much more likely to put a really strict interpretation on each and every element of the offence if they know at the end of it they have no discretion on sentencing and they must put the person in jail for 6 years. So when we have the coalition beating their chest and saying mandatory minimum sentences are going to keep the community safe, all the evidence we have says it won't. It'll do the exact opposite, make it harder to get convictions. It will certainly mean far more trials are contested, because who on earth would cop a plea if you've got a mandatory minimum sentence that you're going to have? And it's far less likely you'll have people cooperating with the police. And in circumstances where we've seen both the AFP and the New South Wales Police are saying, in relation to a number of the incidents we've seen, they're not sure who's funding or causing these individuals to do these appalling attacks. In those circumstances, you may have some career criminal who's been directed by maybe a foreign agent, maybe someone locally. The career criminal commits the offence. You have a mandatory sentence. What incentive is there for them to cooperate to tell who actually funded it, where the directions came from? Because win, lose or draw, they're going to go to jail for 6 years, mandatory minimum. It makes it far harder for police. And we know what works in this space. Working with communities, listening to the evidence, joining this country together, not dividing it like this. Labor and the coalition between them have turned something that could have absolutely united us all in fights against anti-Semitism, in fights against racism, in fights against intolerance, against the LGBTIQ community, and they've turned it into this ugly, nasty bit of politics. There's something rotten in the way the two major parties in this country ignore the evidence, drive this toxic politics and create bad laws like this with no scrutiny. The Greens know there are elements, particularly in the original bill, that are kind of essential to deal with some of the hate crimes that we're seeing. We'll take some measurable good. And we've been trying to say to the government, work with the rest of the chamber here, the diversity of the crossbench, and don't just be dragged by Peter Dutton to the single lowest common denominator. But they can't help themselves, Labor, can they? They just can't help themselves. They just keep surrendering time after time after time. There's no principle that they won't sully. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here with these mandatory minimums. Mandatory minimums, we know it won't work. We know it's going to fight against all of the purported intent of this bill. And shame on you both for doing this.
Senator Rennick.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Chair. And I rise to speak against this bill today. This is the third parliamentary week in a row that we have come to Canberra and the two major parties are trying to introduce laws that prevent free speech in this country. Now, I don't know about you, but I come down to Canberra to serve the people, not control people. And that's what this bill is all about. It is a political stunt, and it is a political stunt because the two major parties don't have any solutions to the real crisis in this country, which is the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, and the housing crisis. Instead, what they want to do is basically dog whistle about race in order to deflect from their own ineptitude at solving problems. We already have laws in this country that deal with violent acts and sedation. Okay, we do not need more laws in this country that allow, that target certain statements against certain groups on the basis of violence. Why? Because we already have these laws. What is the purpose of these laws if we already have laws against violence? Now, I know Senator Cash was at pains before to stress that this was only in regards to violent acts and not psychological acts. Well, I want to know why the Liberal Party think that it's necessary to bring in laws for violent acts when we already have laws for violent acts. And of course, the only answer to that is that they want to dog whistle and play games with race when they should be focused on solutions. And here's the thing. How do you identify a hate symbol? You know, a hate symbol in someone, you know, someone's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. How do you actually identify what someone thinks about a certain particular ideology? Who's right and who's wrong? I mean, if these people, if you believe and you don't believe in what this person's point of view is, why can't you debate the person? Why do you want to gag that person? What is it that you're hiding? What is it that you're hiding? Is it because the two major parties lack the intellectual capacity to have a debate about these issues? And of course, the answer to that is yes, they do. They are nothing but puppets on a string that have survived in these political parties for far too long by being nothing but obedience. And I'd like to reference my good friend in the House, the member for Hinkler, Keith Pitt, when he said he was not going to contest again. As he said, you know, the whole idea of sticking to the script and discipline is actually nothing more than obedience. And that's what the Liberal Party, I can't speak for the Labor Party, even though it seems they're pretty much the same as the Liberal Party. It's all about obedience in their eyes. It's nothing about free thought, their capacity to have a rational debate and actually point the opposite point of view across and let the facts make the case. Let the facts make the case. I mean, look at the last week's hysteria over the bombs in a caravan. Senator Babbitt, please remind me the next time I decide to blow something up that I'll leave bombs in a caravan with a handwritten note that I'm going to do it and where I'm going to do it. I mean, this type of fear-mongering over allegations that somehow a couple of meth heads who'd be lucky to get their next find their next hit are somehow organising a terrorist plot is absolutely absurd. And while for a minute, you know, I don't agree with the Prime Minister on many things, I think the attack on him and somehow that he's playing games with this is absolutely absurd. And that's what this bill is all about. It's a political stunt and it's going to circumvent free speech.
Thank you, Senator Rennick. The allotted time for the second reading stage of this bill has expired. Therefore, the question before the Senate is that Senator Lambie's second reading amendment on sheet 3281 be agreed to? Those of that opinion say aye. Against, no. I think the noes have it. The noes have it. The question is now that the bill be read a second time. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, no. I think the ayes have it. Clerk.
A bill for an act to amend the Criminal Code Act 1995 and for related purposes.
The wish of the committee that the bill be taken as a whole. There being no objection, it is so ordered. The question is that the bill stand as printed. Senator Cash.
Thank you very much. I just want to go through, just in terms, Minister, of the use of the word force or violent. I know I'll give Minister Watt the courtesy of just waiting for him to. That way. Can I just confirm, Minister, I think you're completely aware of this because it was interrogated during the committee stage by Senator Scarr. In the inquiry into the bill, it was confirmed by the Attorney-General's Department, but just because this is a committee stage, if I could just work through it again with you to get it on the Hansard record. In line with the advice from officials from both Home Affairs and the Attorney-General's Department, the term force or violence in this legislation takes its ordinary meaning and refers to physical force or violence.
Oh, sorry, I need to wait to be called, don't I? Or do I?
Minister.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to do the right thing. Acting Deputy President. Thanks, Senator Cash. Just before I answer your question, could I also take the opportunity to table a revised explanatory memorandum relating to this bill? Thanks. Yes, Senator Cash, I can confirm what you've just said. The terms force or violence are not defined in the legislation and they would take their ordinary meaning. What is intended is that the terms force or violence would only extend to physical force or violence against a person or group. This is consistent with the ordinary meaning of these terms.
Senator Cash.
And thank you for that clarification, because obviously there has been some discussion with a number of stakeholders who do have an interest in this legislation. And I know that there will be some amendments moved in this regard, which will not be, we will not be supporting. And this is why, just for the, obviously for the benefit of anyone who may need to interpret the legislation, I'm just going to ask you one or two more questions in the same vein though. So can you confirm that this bill as amended makes it an offence to advocate force or violence in the terms that you have just described against Jewish people through conduct involving damage to property?
Minister.
Confirm that.
Senator Cash.
And just again, for the benefit of the chamber, the new offence in section 82BE, it specifically includes minor damage, such as offensive slogans painted on buildings, if they advocate force or violence against groups. And again, just for the benefit of the Hansard record, that is the correct position.
Minister.
Yes, I can confirm that as well, Senator Cash.
Senator, there was a draw then. Sorry, Senator Cash. Senator Farrell, just go to Senator Cash and come to you. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And just can you confirm that if a person is convicted of the new offence under section 82BE of the Criminal Code, the one we just referred to, then based on the amendments passed, this one will be subject to the mandatory minimum sentence of 12 months imprisonment.
Yes, I can.
Sorry, Minister.
Sorry, that's right. Okay. Yes, I can confirm that as well.
Thank you.
Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, Chair. I seek leave to move Green's amendment on sheet 3290 on sunsetting of mandatory minimum sentences.
Is leave granted?
She doesn't need leave, she can just move it.
Look, I'll make it easy for you. You can just move it. You can just move it, Senator Faruqi. Yeah.
Thank you. So could I move Green's amendment 329 on sheet 3290?
Yes. You want to speak to it, Senator Faruqi? You want to put the question? The question is the motion moved by Senator Faruqi, the Australian Greens be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against? No, the noes have it. Noes have it. Division required, ring the bells for 4 minutes.
4 minutes? Okay, thank goodness. All right, we've got some time to just breathe for 4 minutes. All right, in about 30 seconds, I'm going to post the Gerard Rennie clip because that was bloody hilarious. I'm just fixing up the caption. How funny was that? Gerard Rennick, bloody hell. Okay. Okay, the clip is posted in 3, 2. I need Starlink. 1. There we go. All right, Anya, Gerard Rennick. That was bloody hilarious. Not gonna lie. All right, Gerard Rennick's clips up. And then the division is on Faruqi's amendment to remove the minimum mandatory sentences. Which looks like it's going to be a no, because what? Where's Faruqi? I think that's Faruqi. So that's the yes side, that's the no side. All right, Gerard Rennick clips up. That was funny. I'm going to rewatch it. I'll pull it up actually, so we can watch it while this is going on. So if anyone wants to check out the Gerard Rennie clip, I've just posted it. That was funny. Here we go. Just make sure I keep an eye on the Senate. Okay.
I mean, look at the last week's hysteria over the bombs in a caravan. Senator Babbitt, please remind me the next time I decide to blow something up that I'll leave bombs in a caravan with a handwritten note that I'm going to do it and where I'm going to do it. I mean, this type of fear-mongering over allegations that somehow a couple of meth heads who'd be lucky to get their next find their next hit are somehow organising a terrorist plot is absolutely absurd. And while for a minute, you know, I don't agree with the Prime Minister on many things, I think the attack on him and somehow that he's playing games with this is absolutely absurd. And that's what this bill is all about. It's a political stunt and it's going to circumvent free speech.
Stop the doors. The question before the committee is that the amendment on sheet 3290, as moved by Senator Faruqi, be agreed to. Those for the question move to the right of the chamber, noes to the left of the chamber. Appointed as teller for the aye, Senator McKim, and teller for the noes, Senator O'Sullivan.
Okay, we're live. We're good.
This is a sunset.
I'm having social media minimum age bill flashbacks all of a sudden, but at least this is, I mean, the only positive is that this is going to get done and dusted within the next hour. It's not a positive, but bloody hell. Elon's latest post, what? Don't say that Elon reposted it. I'll have a heart attack if you reposted it. Nah, he hasn't reposted it. No repost the clip on his latest. Oh, okay. Oh, because he just put a post up. He just reposted Schellenberger. Four minutes ago. The post below the one that I just put up about Rennick, the Faruqi one. Faruqi takes a shot at Elon Musk.
Honourable Senators, the result of the division is 16 ayes and 26 noes. It's passed in the negative. Yes, Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I move Green's amendment on sheet 3284.
So that was the criminal code amendment that got voted down just then.
Is going to keep no one, or make no one safer in this country. So Labour should think about what they are doing here. Yeah, exactly. Backflip on your own policy after promises that Senator Watt, sitting right there, made just 2 days ago. Think about how this will impact First Nations communities, First Nations children, people of color, the exact groups that you say you want to expand protections for will be targeted by mandatory minimum sentencing. Shame on you. There is still time. Let's get these highly unjust laws out of this bill.
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. I'm required now by a previous order to put the question, and this will be the first question that I'll put, and then I'll proceed. Oh, Senator Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. We're in the guillotine now?
Time has expired.
Time has expired.
Thank
yes.
you. Pursuant to contingent notice standing in my name, I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent further consideration of the bill without.
Oh, stuffed up the
limitation
caption. God
of
damn it.
time.
Do I stay here? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. pretty extraordinary move when you have a bill that has the broad support of the community, is something that Australians recognise that we need, has the support of the crossbench to pass, has the support of the crossbench to potentially pass with some strengthening and sensible amendments that the member for Wentworth, Allegra Spender, moved in the other place. And yet we have Labor who capitulate to the coalition to add mandatory minimum sentences and totally politicise a bill that could have been the Parliament, the Senate saying, this is important in our community and we're not going to stand for it. They've now added something that has absolutely no evidence that it works. No evidence that mandatory minimum sentencing works. It's against Labor's policy platform. Earlier I read out 4 or 5 quotes from Labor ministers, including Senator Watt, saying exactly that, saying it doesn't work. Why would we vote for something that had mandatory minimum sentencing? And now you're putting the crossbench in a position where we have good policy that has the support of our constituents, that we've consulted on, that we're set to vote for, and you do an overnight deal where you add something that has no justification, no backing from any expert, and then you give us absolutely no time to actually consult. 15 minutes to consider this bill in committee of the whole. 3 questions from Senator Cash, 1 vote on an amendment, and then we're into it. I feel like this is so disrespectful to the communities that we represent. And my team's been frantically ringing the Canberra Jewish community, the Muslim community, LGBTI community, saying, hey, we support this bill, but now there's mandatory minimum sentencing. What do you want to do? No one supports the mandatory minimum sentencing. It's so shameful. And I expected, you can see this coming from the coalition. They want to talk tough on national security. And yet it turns out when they're in there, they're actually not that tough, that there's all sorts of things that have been happening. But the disappointing thing is Labor doing this, going against their own principles. I do not understand, and I don't know who they're trying to please with this, because it certainly isn't rank and file Labor members or Labor voters who believe in something. So I have serious concerns about the process of this and the serious concerns of what's been cooked up that took a good bill with broad support that was long overdue and politicised it and added a whole lot of stuff to it that makes it very, very hard to vote for.
The Minister has the priority.
I move that the question be put.
So the question is that the question be put. I'm going to move that question. I move the question. Those for the question say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Division required. Bring the bills.
Lydia Thorpe's in there. Let's look at the division while we've got it time, because we'll be able to see. Your browser has lost connection to screen share audio. Hopefully it's not this browser. Just tell me in the comments if you can't hear me, and then I'll refresh it. Okay, so 16 yes, 26 no. Yes, the Greens. So the Greens are in there. Payman's in there. Thorpe's in there. Pocock's there. Rennick's not entered. I don't know what that means. Not entered. Did they just not vote? No's Labor. So Labor's voting. Liberal Party is voting against, Tammy Tyrrell is voting against, and Nationals against. Don't know what this amendment was about, because this was the one that they're doing now is with regards to the minimum mandatory sentencing. Can't find this one. It's probably going to take too long. But it was obviously something that was shit because Canavan and Roberts voted against it. And the Greens wanted it. It's hard to keep up with all these amendments as well. But the one now is the mandatory minimum sentences. Hit up Timcast. I don't think I'm good enough to be on Timcast. I could probably hit up Elijah because I know his team. Quartering would be good. Have you caught up with Joel? No, I haven't seen Joel in ages. Thanks for the $5 though. Is that Lydia Thorpe? Silken? There's Babette, Canavan. I'm pretty sure that's Babette. Yeah, I think that's Babette, Canavan. So this is going to be no. Overwhelmingly no. It's probably like 20, maybe 30 senators. So they're not going to remove mandatory minimum sentences. Yeah, so this is not going to pass, obviously. Mandatory minimum sentences. They're going to, Labor actually has a policy where they are against mandatory minimum sentences. But they've capitulated and now this is going to pass. You know, it's interesting. The chair of the Senate at the moment is the same chair that we had for the social media ban as well. He seems to always preside against the censorship bills. While we're waiting, everyone that's on X, go to my pinned post and follow my backup page, because I don't trust my chances of not being the next victim to get taken down. So it's the pinned post on my page. Just follow my backup. I don't know if this is going to work. Post it in the comments anyway. There you go. Yeah, if you're on X, follow my backup just in case something happens. Where's the handle? There's the handle there. Just my name. Let's try to get everyone that's watching to follow, so that in that way, just in case something happens to this account, at least there is a small group of people that can let everyone know what the hell happened. So everyone just give that account page a follow on X. Still waiting for the division. Similar numbers. This is another one of Faruqi's amendments. So proposed suspension of standing orders. This is just for them to, like, they do this when they need to rush a bill through. Peter Dutton has put a post up on X. What's he got to say? Just bring that up. All right, so Peter Dutton has said last night the Albanese government was forced, make this bigger, was forced to back my calls for tougher penalties and new offences for anti-Semitic attacks, amending their own legislation and supporting the coalition's stronger measures. We have secured mandatory minimum jail sentences for acts of terrorism of 6 years. Actually, before I even read the rest of it, I need to put a post up saying, well done on subversing that's the word. I'm pretty sure that's the word. Subverting democracy and passing this bill within 24 hours with absolutely no scrutiny. You'll make for great opposition. That's such a great opposition. There we go, that too. All right, another division. Back to the post. Okay. So we have secured mandatory minimum jail sentences for acts of terrorism for 6 years in jail, 3 years mandatory minimum jail sentences for terrorism financing, a minimum of 1 year jail sentence for the display of Nazi or terrorist symbols and the Nazi salute. And we have also increased the maximum for those offences to 5 years, a minimum 1 year jail sentence for property damage that advocates for force or violence to be used against groups because of their religion, race, or ethnicity. We have also secured a decisive response to attacks on places of worship through new offences for those who advocate or threaten such attacks, as well as attacks on vehicles or property. This is the strong leadership needed to keep Australians safe and get our country back on track. Pathetic. I hate Dutton so much. I actually hate Dutton more than I hate Albo. I'm not even going to lie. Another bill that they're going to pass with less than an hour of debates in the Senate. Unbelievable. I'm starting to think, I'm saying the obvious, but I'm starting to think having these ex-cops as political leaders is a bad idea. But do we help Brad Batten get elected in Victoria, or do you live under Jacinta Allen for another 4 years? Do you help Dutton get elected, or do you live under Albo for another 3 years? That is the question. Yeah, I'm backing Gerard Rennick, that's for sure. I'm gonna help Gerard Rennick. I mean, Russell Broadbent, he voted yes for this bill. But he's doing such great work on the vaccine injury. The people that are vaccine injured. But man, I really got to stop giving these politicians a pass on things. It's time to really be cutthroat. Plus the bloke's damn near, I don't even know. I'm gonna guess he's like 78. I was close. 74. It's gonna be 77, 78 by the time this term finishes, if he gets re-elected. But still, my policy now is we need to get all of these skeletons out of Parliament. So, yeah, Broadbent, you're on the chopping block for me. Sorry, mate. I have a strict policy now. All skeletons in the Australian Parliament need to go. Yeah, Russell Broadbent voted for this in the House earlier this morning. On a scale of 1 to China, how fucked are we? I mean, we're pretty much there. All the infrastructure for a social credit score is there. All they're doing now is just putting the legal framework around it. And then we're there. But yeah, in terms of 1 to China, we're like maybe one step away from China. At the moment, we're sort of like around the UK. Yeah, we're working on a list at the moment, so we're gonna try to get a comprehensive list, but also do federal election how to vote cards. Lydia Thorpe. So they're voting on the amendments at the moment. So it looks like they're gonna vote no on Lydia Thorpe's amendment. We've got Did you hear that? There's no sound. You're joking. Trying to sort this out. Don't know why there's no audio. But they're just going through the amendments, so it's okay. Don't stress too much. They're going through Matt Canavan's amendments now. So Matt Canavan's amendments, I'll pull it up because he posted it. So insert force back in and violence back in because they're trying to remove those terms out of the bill. All right, now they're doing a division on the whole bill. So no amendments were passed. Let me try to fix this audio quickly. Gonna shut this tab. And then I'm gonna reopen it. And fingers crossed it works. This should work. Just give me a thumbs up if it works.
So it's, look,
All right, cool. We're good. Sweet. Thanks for that. So now this is the division for the vote on the whole bill because all of the amendments are struck down, which is obvious. And as you can see with the numbers on the left-hand side,
lock the doors.
it's going to pass.
The question now is that the remaining stages of the bill be agreed to and the bill be now passed. Those for the question pass to the right of the chair, noes to the left of the chair. I appoint Senator Ciccone as teller for the ayes and Senator McKim as teller for the noes. No? Senator Pocock, I appoint you as teller for the noes.
Okay, so final division by the looks of it on the bill. Just taking a screen grab of this because I've got to get a post up with regards to the voting results. So it looks like it's going to be an overwhelming yes, but not as lopsided as it was in the House. It's like 117 to 13 or something. So if you guys just give me 30 seconds, as soon as the division results are posted, I will have the outcome of who voted yes and who voted no, so you can add them to the list of senators that we need to scold for passing this bill. And I'm going to have a comprehensive list of all the MPs and senators that voted yes on misinformation bill, that voted yes on the social media ban bill, that are voting for this currently as we speak. So then that way, and I'll let you know only the ones that are up for re-election, so that way you can try to campaign to get them out of your local area. So we're really going to target these people. We're not going to just let them get away with it. We're just trying to get rid of as many as possible at this upcoming election.
Honourable Senators, there being 41 ayes and 6 noes, it's resolved in the affirmative. I will now deal with the... Clerk.
A bill for an act to amend the Criminal Code Act 1995 and for related purposes.
I will now deal with the Navigation Amendment Bill 2024. The question now is that this bill be now read a second time. Those for the question say aye. Against, no. I think the ayes have it. Clerk.
Okay,
For an act to amend the Navigation Act 2012 and for related
that's it. We're done. You've got... I've just put
Question
the
now
post up.
is that this bill be now read a...
I'm just going to switch it here. There's the results. All right, where's the Senate? I'm closing the Senate. I'm done listening to that crap. So there's the post here. 41 senators voted yes and 6 senators voted no. Just like the social media minimum age bill, a whole bunch of senators decided to stab you in the back and take more of your freedoms away from you. So if you want to repost that, that's up on my page right now. Let's try to get this reposted up as quick as possible so people can see it. The division results have been uploaded. Let me just quickly move this here because Albo did a press conference and I just want to go through that with you guys and then we'll start working on punishing these blokes. All right, yes. So yes, Labor. So Tim Ayres, hate this bloke so much. Katie Gallagher, Anita Green, Murray Watt. Greens voted for it. So Greens were against the bill because of the minimum mandatory sentences, but they still voted for it. Liberal Party, okay, Askew, Chandler, Scar, Sharma, Dave Sharma, of course Sharma voted yes. Michaela Cash voted yes. Bridget McKenzie voted yes. Wait, is this yes or no? Yes. What's going on here? Matt Canavan voted yes? Wait, what? Bro. Did Canavan vote yes? Or is this glitching? Brother. Did Matt Canavan vote yes? What are we doing here? Can someone tell me that I'm reading this wrong? Did Matt Canavan vote yes? I mean, Jacinta Price, we knew that she was going to stab us in the back. But what's going on here? Surely there's a name error here. Rennick didn't vote. Babbitt didn't vote. Antic was the only Liberal Party member. I think Alex Antic might be the only one that's standing by by his own morals. I think Alex Antic might be the last man standing. Alex Antic might be the only one left. You have got to be fucking joking. All right, I'm posting the results now. So what I'll do is I'll post the results. And then I'm going to tag Canavan in the one that says his name. And we're going to ask for an explanation. So everyone in 30 seconds, please retweet the one that has Matt Canavan in it. And we need an explanation. Here are the Liberal, here are the coalition senators that voted yes, including Matt Canavan. Bro. What are you doing, Matt? How do you make a speech saying this is bullshit? You guys are passing laws so quickly, blah, 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 blah. Can't believe you guys are doing it again. And then you vote yes on it. Oh, man. What are you doing, Matt? All right, and then I'll post the no's. I think Alex Antic is the only one, man. Alex Antic is the only senator that will defy every fucking thing thrown his way. For the greater good. They voted yes for the amendment. It's not for the amendment, it's for the whole bill. It's the amendment bill. It's the whole thing. They're amending the old criminal code. All right, all the results are up. Okay, all the results are up. I'm just going to put these up on all my other channels. And then, unless I'm reading it wrong, but I don't, whoops. Unless I'm reading it wrong, but I'm like 90%, 99.99999% chance certain that I'm not reading it wrong. I don't get it. I just don't get it. The amendments were all struck down. Where is it? Divisions. Share this page. So amendments, no. Amendments, Lydia Thorpe's one, well, yes. I'll bring up wait, amendments 1, 3, 10 on sheet 3, 2. See, I got to find these numbers. I got to find out what exactly was voted yes on. So it's 1, 3, 10 on 3259 Lydia Thorpe, and then certain schedule numbers, item numbers. Amendment Lydia Thorpe voted no, and then the vote for the bill in its entirety was voted yes, and voted yes, and then you've got Canavan. Like, what are we doing here? Oh, wow. They all sold us out now for what? Nah. What happened? What did I miss? So the amendment to the criminal code passing hate speech laws has passed. Labor voted yes for it in the Senate. Greens voted yes for it in the Senate. Liberal Party senators voted yes for it. Matt Canavan and Bridget McKenzie voted yes for it. And Jacinta Price, in true form, just like she did with the social media ban, voted yes for it. I'm going to have to post the results for this Senate vote because this is more important than the House vote. The House vote is almost, well, it is not almost, it is inconsequential. It makes no difference to us because they have a majority anyway. Labor Party has a majority anyway, so it doesn't matter. We can't stop it there. The only thing that we can do is just take names. But with regards to Senate, it's much more important because the Senate is where it becomes law. I hope I didn't stuff this thread up. So I accidentally posted the Canavan one. I botched the order of the post because I did it on desktop. Whoops. But it's all there. So Australia, as always, is infiltrated by, yeah, unreal, man. All right, so while this is going, I'm going to go to this because Albo did a press conference and we need to watch these MFs.
Under this plan. Now, of course, there are going to
begin by saying that I'm glad to be
Townsville,
here
where the
because
Prime
I wish
Minister
this
is
wasn't
speaking.
happening. But at the worst of times, what we see is the best of the Australian character. And here what we see is Queenslanders, whether they be emergency services personnel, whether they be our police and fire services, the volunteers through the SES, and of course our Australian Defence Force personnel, particularly those based at the barracks here in Townsville, but right throughout Australia. We've had choppers come from Oakey as well as from Townsville. And what we're seeing here through three...
Joined the ranks of Malcolm Fraser's new government in
Oh my God, it's 2 o'clock
He won
already.
the seat of Ryan.
Which means it's a question time already. It's all right.
And there's a seamless operation through NEMA, our national agency. Our Minister McAllister, has been here all week and will stay here for the rest of this week, but we will continue to provide what's necessary as well. Of course, there's no better group of people to find out what's needed than to speak to local mayors and local government because they're in touch with what's happening on the ground, and we see that here as well. Today, we're announcing $8 million co-funded community relief fund, providing up to $1 million for the local government associations, 8 of them, that are
Matt
impacted by
Canavan,
this
what are you
flooding
doing,
event.
man?
This will provide councils with financial assurance that they need to get on with the business of cleaning up and making their community safe. From 2 o'clock today, we will also be activating the Australian Government Disaster Recovery Payment. This provides $1,000 for eligible adults and $400 for children who, for affected people in the localities of Cardwell and Giru and the local government area of Hinchinbrook. You can check your
All right,
availability
just putting
on
this post
servicesaustralia.gov.au,
up
Services
everywhere
Australia,
else.
one word, / disaster support, one word again, or call the emergency info line that we've established, 180-2266. That's 180-2266. This funding is to help people who've suffered serious damage or injury as a result of the floods, to help with the costs of recovery. This follows yesterday's activation of the Disaster Recovery Allowance for eligible workers and sole traders who've suffered a loss of income. This morning, we also announced through the disaster recovery funding arrangements that we're co-funding disaster loans for North Queensland farmers, small business and not-for-profits. These loans have been activated for the local government areas of Burdekin, Cairns, Cassowary Coast, Hinchinbrook, Palm Island, Townsville and Yarrabah, and will provide up to $250,000 for eligible primary producers and small businesses, and to provide up to $100,000 for eligible not-for-profits so they can re-establish themselves by covering costs. Can I say that all of this is on top of the Australian Defence
And then we're
Force
going straight to the
that are
comment section
delivering
and asking for a fucking
extraordinarily
explanation.
for this local community. It's been a great honour to meet the service personnel and to Lieutenant Colonel Brian Mitchell, who's shown us around here today from the barracks, and for his team. They are doing extraordinary engineering work. As we have been here, we have seen the rolling out of the immediate fixing of this bridge so that supplies can get through. Now, that's just
All right,
stage
it's
one.
posted.
Stage two will be to put in a temporary bridge so that people will be able to move up and down this highway. But importantly as well, we need to build back better. We can't continue.
He said it again. He said it like 4 times today in different interviews.
Up and down this highway, but importantly as well, we need to build back better. But importantly as well, we need to build back better. But importantly as well, we need to build back better.
Guys, we are so screwed. We are so fucking screwed. I don't even know what to say anymore. We are being trolled. I wish it was a trolling and, you know, there was a joke that we can laugh about at the end of this, like, haha. Wow, you really got us. But, like, the real life consequences of this shit cannot be overstated. Like, people are legitimately suffering so badly at the moment. And they're just dancing on everyone's graves and aspirations and and then you got this fucking clown.
People will be able to move up and down this highway, but importantly as well, we need to build back better. We can't continue to have a view that you just do the same thing because you'll get the same results. And we are committed to building back better, making sure that
like three times in
this
one sentence.
bridge, we get a better one, one that's higher, one that's longer, one that's sustainable, and one that isn't knocked out the next time there is an event like this. And can I say, that's my mate Bob behind me. When I was last the minister, Bob Catter came to me about the Ironsley River Bridge. Used to get knocked out and they'd build it and they'd get swept away again during the next event in Corumba, and Normanton would get isolated. It's madness to do the same thing over and over again and think you'll get a different outcome.
Say it again, man. Say it
What
again.
we need to do is what we did there. Fix the Ironsley River Bridge, made a difference. They did it through local government, so they were then able to use the funds to build another 3 bridges. It's something that I'm really proud of. And can I just say that for all the local members here, not just Bob, I know Phil Thompson's been working really hard here in Townsville as well. I know state members have been working hard, and local mayors and councillors as well. But most importantly, this community has been showing community spirit, resilience, and inspiring their fellow Australians with the work that they're doing. We'll continue to be here for as long as is needed. We'll make the immediate changes that are required to provide support, but we'll also engage in how we build back better and how we build better resilience into the community. We've established a $200 million fund annual for making sure that we build infrastructure and we deal with
What is going on?
resilience because we are seeing in Australia, unfortunately, more
I've got
extreme weather
goosebumps.
events, and they're more intense.
What the fuck is going
Doesn't mean
on?
everything is due to climate change. We've always had extreme weather events in this country, but we are seeing them more often. Last year was, of course, the hottest year on record in global temperatures. We do need to continue to respond in the long term, but we need to look after people. And it's been pleasing to work with the Premier. I'll hand to the Premier and then we'll hear from the Mayor, and then the Premier and I are happy to take questions, and the ministers are here as well. Thanks, mate.
PM, thank you very much. I've got an important update about the unfolding situation. But first, Prime Minister, thank you. Thanks very much. And I think you only had to listen to the response from the ADF troops to know what it means for you to be on the ground. It's an excellent thing.
Christopher, you couldn't say anything that I would actually give a damn to listen to right now. He said build back better like 7 times in that one little speech. What? He's got to be trolling now. He's like, you know what? I know Anthony's watching right now. Let's give him some more runs on the board to take the piss out of this whole situation. I saw apparently Pauline Hanson did a press conference. I'll pull it up. I don't know what it's about. It says here, One Nation announces policies to put money back in your pocket. I'll play that. It's 8 minutes. So that way.
It's about slack. My colleague and I, Senator Malcolm Roberts, are pleased to announce our policy on behalf of One Nation for the people of Australia. This is about Australia's future. It's about putting money back into the pockets of Australians. It's about slashing government waste. And it's about tax reform and spending that the major political parties will never do. We want to slash about approximately $90 billion from government waste and spending. Since the Albanese Labor government have taken over, they've increased their spending by approximately about $300 billion plus a year. It is unsustainable. It is a drain on our economy. It is a cost of living crisis for the Australian people. A lot of areas need to be addressed, as in the Climate Change Department needs to be gone. The Aboriginal Industry Department needs to be gone. We can reduce electricity prices for every Australian in business by 20% because the national energy market grid needs to be reined in. The NDIS needs to be addressed. Go back to basics, what it was initially started for. It needs to be means tested. We need to take care of our doctors and the bulk billing that happens. People are denied the right to actually go and see a doctor, or not the right, but the affordability. We're losing GPs.
They're just announcing policy. So if you guys want to watch it, it's on Pauline Hanson's YouTube channel. But yeah, that's it. So the hate speech laws have been passed. Just like the social media minimum age bill, they've basically guillotined it, only put an hour's worth of scrutiny behind it. Pump faked us because we were so heavily distracted on the social media minimum age bill and the misinformation bill that this basically just went, without much of us noticing. And then, yeah, those are the results. We've got, these are the voters, the senators that voted yes, Labor, Greens, accidentally put it in this one, Coalition, Liberal Party, Canavan Bro, Jacinta Price voted yes, and then the senators that voted no, Payman, Pocock, Tyrrell, Antic, Rennick. Rennick didn't enter. I mean, that's like a neutral. They probably just walked out. They were like, nah, screw this shit. And Babbitt. But Antic is the one that voted. And Antic is like the last man standing. So everyone get behind Alex Antic by the looks of it. I think, I have no doubt in my mind that Alex Antic might just be the last man standing. But yeah, Canavan voted yes. I'm going to refresh the divisions page one more time. Like, am I reading this wrong? His name's still there. Oh dear. We're going to have to take some more names. We're going to have to take some names, put them next to the date of when their term finishes, and get rid of them. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in with me. I really wish that we knew that this was something that was happening much earlier in the piece. But this year, I'm going to do my absolute best to make sure that all bills before the Parliament are scrutinised and brought to our attention, so that way we don't get jumped like we did this time around. Everyone on X, as you have seen over the last couple of days, a lot of people, outspoken people, whether you support them or care about their ideology, that's not the business that I'm here to discuss right now. I'm actually on a live maybe tomorrow, most likely tomorrow, to have a chat with one of the guys about it all. So tune in for that. But in the event that my account gets taken down, I do have a personal account. It's pinned in on my Australians versus the Agenda page. So give that a follow. Let's try to run this number up. So that way, in the event that I get taken down, at least I've got a backup. It's not going to be much of a backup, but it is what it is. Let's start building it up now. Everyone that's on YouTube, there's like 84 people watching at the moment. There's a join button. If you can become a member, if you can help us out and support the channel, I'd greatly appreciate that. And everyone on X, there's a link in my bio. if you want to chip in $5, $10, whatever you can, I'd greatly appreciate it. There's a link to buy me a coffee. And I mean, my birthday was just this week. So happy birthday to me. If you want to buy me a drink, I'd greatly appreciate it. It helps a lot. And I'll just go through the people that have bought a coffee on the page because I missed them. I haven't streamed over the last couple of months since the social media ban got passed. Nick, have enjoyed your work for a long time now. Can support it. I will. Thank you so much, Nick. Thanks to Aaron. Someone, what's that message here? You should charge News Corp for modelling fee, $525. Yeah, I'm still dealing with that. Thanking you for Parliament live streams and especially your info for who to vote. It's a unique resource. Us can decide on who should. I've got to add more names to that list. Who should we not vote for in the upcoming election? Kieran, someone, Ash, thank you for the coffees. Greatly appreciate it. Nick, great source of information on what your government's up to. Thank you. Henry, keep up the good work. Here's a dono to help pay for your fine. This is convenient timing leading to the Australian election. Tell me about it. Mainstream politicians don't want independent journalists, keeping them accountable. Thanks, Henry. Someone, Lisa, thank you for your work. Brendo, NF Publications, nice work. Thank you. Ben, thank you for all you've done. Keep it up. Thank you, Monica. Fuck News Corp. For those that may not know, News Corp chased me up a couple of months ago, like a month, 6 weeks ago, about a photo that I used that they took of me when I got arrested and thrown in jail for breaching COVID restrictions. They're trying to sting me for $500 for using their intellectual property. So that's what that's about. Hope this helps. Are you able to claim fair use on the photo? I've got someone working on that for me now. Conservative Sniper News Corp is not on the people's side. Shane, thanks, you guys are great. Thanks for all you do. Happy to help. Strength and honor. Ben, thank you. Biohack Club, thank you. Michael, thank you. Keep going. Rob, good luck, buddy. Stephen, thank you for your efforts. Paul, keep punching, mate. Someone. IMC Gilly, good work. Anthony, thank you. Harry, keep up the good work. K174, love your work. Thank you. Sharon, someone. Deanna, Cricket. Michael Simmons, joined Go Good Thing. Thank you for your time and spend money on caring for the country. Adam, 20 coffees. Wow, that's $100. Thank you so much, Adam. Boogeyman, keep it up, bro. And list emails and contacts for the heroes under the description of your video so your subscribers can interact with them directly. Yeah, I'm working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and once it's ready, I'll publish it all. You guys will get the best updates out of me. I'll do my best. Legally brain dead, we've needed a strong, well-informed person who can unite and lead the fight against this tyrannical government. Count me in as a member. Power to the people. So people that sign up as a member for $20, I'm going to be doing the live streams from tomorrow. So I'm going to send out an email so everyone gets a notification and you guys can actually join the stream with me. So if you guys are wanting to join the stream with me and have a private stream where we can actually talk about what's going on, click the link in my bio and you can join that stream tomorrow. And I'm going to have a pretty gnarly guest. A guest that no one else will probably have because they don't have the cojones to do it. And I'm going to get accusations up my eyeballs about, oh, why'd you platform them? Get fucked, mate. Listen, Glennie, so glad to find you. Saw you on Outsiders. Decided you're a very worthy cause. Supported Australia. Far and few between. Thanks for your great efforts in exposing, keeping us informed. Bravo. Georgie, thank you. Janice. I think that's probably most of them because I've read these ones, I think. If I haven't, they're on the page there, so I'm acknowledging them now. Thank you to everyone so much. Greatly appreciate it. Everyone that's watching, if you want to become a member, it helps a lot. I'm telling you, it helps a lot because I'm doing this in the middle of the day. So you know that I'm trying to make this a full-time commitment. $5 to help out. $20, you can join the stream. It's going to be weekly. I'm going to start it from tomorrow. It's going to be in the evening. I'll post about it on X and everywhere else. And yeah, I've got a crazy guest that's going to be on there and you'll be able to join the stream. audio or video, up to you guys. Completely trust your privacy if you don't want to be on screen. But yeah, that's it. Looks like the bill passed. Matt Canavan voted for it. I need an explanation as to why that happened. With regards to the hate speech laws, now they just need royal assent. It'll probably get royal assent very quickly, if not already. Let's just refresh the page one more time. And then I'm going to go and start my day. My personal day. So pass both houses, and this will say status assent very soon. So once it's got an assent, I might make a little post saying, hey, it's passed, but you know, it is what it is. The governor's not going to say no to it. I don't think the governor's ever said no to any legislation in the history of Australia. That's it. Thank you, everyone. Greatly appreciate it. Support the channel if you can. It helps a lot. And yeah, share all the posts. Let everyone know that this just happened, because a lot of people are going to be at work and will only find out about it in the next couple of hours. That's it. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I'll post any clips from, what's it called? Question time, which just started 30 minutes ago. Super chats. Oh, here we go. I read that one. On a scale of 1 to China, how fucked are we? Mr. Grant Gregory again. What if they apply this so 2011 tweets will be considered under current law? Lambie has championed this. They want to make an example of us globally. Can you DM me on Twitter and let me know what that's about? Yeah, let me know what that's about. Is that 2011 or 2100 and 2011 tweets? 2011 tweets? Send me a message and I'll get some more info from you about that. That's it. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Keep sharing the post, because a lot of people don't know that this has happened. Let's let them know. Let's let them know, because everyone's coming back from work in the next couple of hours. That's it. Bye-bye.